Ooh, you're diving into the dark and icy waters of Antarctica. The eerie blue darkness is enveloping you, reminiscent of the vast expanse of open space. In these depths, where you least expect to encounter any living creature, you suddenly hear a loud, strange sound. A quacking noise, as if a giant duck was hidden in the deep. In 1960, researchers first recorded this sound and named it Bioduck. Clever. For decades, they tried to unravel the mystery of its source. Was it a giant kraken? An extraterrestrial spaceship that had crashed into the ocean? A mysterious sea monster? Or perhaps an enormous duck? There were many versions, one more bizarre than the other. Oceanographers detected similar sounds in other locations as well. Off the western coast of Australia and near New Zealand, they recorded similar but higher pitch signals, which they named Biogoose. It seems the creepy atmosphere of the story disappears with such names. Anyways, these sounds were not isolated incidents. They happened multiple times with consistent intervals. Many initially thought the source must be mechanical, given the regularity of the sounds. However, studying the oceans in the latter half of the 20th century was challenging because of limited technologies. Nevertheless, scientists persisted in collecting data on Bioduck and Biogoose, driven by their insatiable curiosity. As more data accumulated, so did the theories. But scientists eventually uncovered the mystery. Bioduck turned out to be a form of communication with a biological origin. When researchers analyzed the repeating sounds, they noticed that the signals never overlapped. One source would speak while the others remained silent, suggesting a form of communication. The question remained, which ocean creature possessed such an extraordinary method of communicating through varied frequency sounds? The answer, as many have guessed, is whales. Scientists compared the Bioduck sound from Antarctica with the calls of minke whales and found striking similarities. The Biogoose sounds from the waters off Australia and New Zealand likely belong to other species or very young minke whales. This discovery, however, only deepened the mystery. What purpose did these sounds serve? Were the whales discussing their dinner plans, laughing at the humans recording their voices, or perhaps sharing deep insights about the universe? The possibilities were endless, but the most astonishing revelation was that humans might one day learn to communicate with these magnificent creatures. Communicating with whales is no longer a far-fetched idea. Scientists from the University of California have already established contact with a humpback whale named Twain. In a groundbreaking experiment, researchers conducted a 20-minute conversation with the marine mammal. Here's how they did it. The specialists went on a marine expedition to the coast of Alaska, where they recorded the sounds of a group of humpback whales. Then they played these sounds through speakers, sending the signals back into the ocean. The recorded sounds resembled a greeting, like, "Hey, what's up?" but in the whale language. These greetings are used by whales to call each other or indicate their location. Now, soon after sending the signals, the researchers received a response. Twain approached the boat, circled it, and replied with a "hey" of its own. This marked the beginning of the first ever human-whale conversation. For 20 minutes, the scientists sent 36 signals to Twain, and each time the whale responded. Moreover, it waited for time intervals before answering. That is, the team received a response from the whale, waited 10 seconds, and turned on the sound again. Researchers then waited 10 seconds and answered. It seems that Twain was a very delicate interlocutor. Maybe it was a gentleman in the whale world, who knows? Or maybe it was simply intrigued by the unusual interaction. The signals used in this communication belonged to a group of whales that included Twain. It's likely that the researchers had recorded Twain's own sounds and used them to communicate with it. In a sense, Twain was conversing with itself. Now let's continue our journey and venture into the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, the Mariana Trench. A quick reminder, the Mariana Trench is a colossal chasm in the ocean floor, stretching over 1,500 miles south of Japan and reaching a depth of nearly 36,000 feet at its deepest point. To put that into perspective, the height of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, is like 1/10 of the Mariana Trench's depth. Now imagine this. In this deep, dark abyss, scientists recorded a strange sound. Unlike Bioduck, this sound resembled something from a science fiction movie, a low rumble, followed by a metallic ping, reminiscent of the sounds made by spaceships in sci-fi movies. Researchers named this mysterious phenomenon biotwang noises. Scientists first detected this strange sound in 2014 during an acoustic survey of the Mariana Trench, and they quickly identified its source: whales, specifically Bride's whales. Using artificial intelligence, researchers analyzed around 200,000 hours of audio recordings from the ocean and found matches with a group of Bride's whales. Like other animals, these whales use sounds as a form of communication. Now, did you know what else was found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? A plastic bottle. It's unlikely it was done by a kraken or a whale or some type of monster. Everything is simpler here. The bottle ended up there because of a human. But that's a topic for another video. Okay, let's deal with one more sound. No whales this time, just a mysterious sound in the loneliest place on Earth. This place is called Point Nemo, and that's why it's so lonely. Located in the South Pacific Ocean, Point Nemo is the most remote spot from any land. The nearest island is 1,450 nautical miles away. It's about the same long distance from land in all other directions. Moreover, here, there's almost no marine life, since few water currents reach this spot, and therefore few nutrients are supplied. In a sense, it's a water desert. And so, in 1997, oceanographers recorded a very strange and frightening sound coming from the depths in the area of Point Nemo. It was something gigantic and scary. People called it the bloop. As soon as journalists found out about this phenomenon, people around the world began to invent the most fantastic versions. The most popular of them was that the sound source was a giant sea monster, kraken, or some other creature. The hype around the bloop didn't last very long. Scientists managed to find out the nature of the mysterious noise. It turned out it belonged to an iceberg. When they crack and collapse, they create powerful ultra-low frequency sounds that can be heard from a very long distance. To confirm this version, scientists recorded the sounds of other icebergs and heard something similar to the bloop. Oh, by the way, Point Nemo is so lonely that space agencies drop out-of-service satellites here. Space objects just fall in the water. There's a 99% chance that no animal or human will be harmed by falling debris in this lonely place. That's why many people call it the satellite cemetery. But what if, someday, a spaceship from another planet falls here? What if it has already fallen in Point Nemo and sometimes emits an emergency signal that breaks through the ocean? Ooh. All the mysteries you have heard have already been solved. How about we end this video with a mystery that still baffles scientists? Meet Upsweep. One of the most mysterious sounds ever recorded in the ocean. It's not just noise, it's a series of short ascending tones repeated at intervals of several seconds. It was first discovered in 1991 using hydrophones installed in the Pacific Ocean. At first, oceanographers suggested that upsweep could be associated with volcanic activity or underwater earthquakes. But the seasonal nature of the sound and its intensity change depending on the time of year, which rules out these versions. People began to consider hypotheses related to the biological life of the ocean. They studied the migration routes of marine animals and their behavior at different times of the year. However, despite all efforts, the sound source has not been identified. Some studies suggest that upsweep may be associated with certain species of fish or other marine animals that make sounds for communication or navigation, but no one has been able to prove it. So, there's a mysterious doorway in the middle of Antarctica. Some people think it's Bigfoot's vacation home, or a shuttlecraft from Star Trek, or maybe a door to Agartha, a mythical kingdom some people believe is located in the center of the Earth. Well, the scientists debunked all these poetic theories and explained that what looks like a mysterious doorway is located in an area of fast sea ice. It's offshore of the coast and is full of little islands with shallow water around them. When ice flows around hard rocks hidden underneath, it can create patterns that look odd but are totally normal. In this spot, the ice is thin, so the rocks underneath have a big effect on how the ice moves. The cold winds in Antarctica also shape the ice and snow and make it look like they're lines and shapes. So, the mysterious doorway is just a rocky ridge poking out because the ice has melted a little. The top of the doorway is the tip of the rock, and the sides are snowy trails left by strong winds blowing in the same direction. It's essentially an iceberg that got stranded and is melting in one place. One YouTuber found another out-of-place mysterious object more than 150 miles off the shore of Antarctica, a 400-foot-long ice ship. The internet went wild with theories like that the ship must have ended up there right from the Bermuda Triangle. But there was no scientific proof that it was a ship and not just a large chunk of ice. And once some other internet users revisited the place, they noticed the ice melted in the summer and the hypothetical ship was gone. Another mysterious Google Maps find in Antarctica was a pyramid. And before you make up an exciting theory about how the ancient Egyptians built a secret base here, I have to tell you it turned out to be just a mountain. It's part of the tallest mountain range in Antarctica that stretches for almost 250 miles. It's not the first pyramid on this continent, as explorers from the British Antarctic expedition found another unusually shaped mountain and nicknamed it the Pyramid. But this one didn't even have a pyramid shape. Here's one Antarctic find that definitely won't disappoint you: a giant ice shelf that reminded scientists of the Grand Canyon. A special submarine robot named RAN covered over 600 miles under the thick ice and brought back some amazing footage of icy mountains, valleys, flat plateaus, and swirly patterns made entirely of ice. One of the strangest things RAN found was giant bowl-shaped holes or scoops in the ice. Sadly, scientists lost track of the robot. They think that curious Wendell seals may have accidentally bumped into RAN and caused it to get stuck. To save energy, RAN probably shut itself down, and the scientists couldn't find it again. But the team is hoping to build a new robot and continue exploring this icy canyon to see how the patterns under the ice might change over the years. Another huge Antarctic canyon was found thanks to bad weather. A team of sound experts had to pause their work at the Casey Research Station in a storm. Instead of waiting around, they decided to use the unexpected free time to map the seafloor near Adams Glacier. And that's how they found a canyon that is almost 7,000 feet deep, almost 30,000 feet wide, and stretches over 28 miles away from the glacier. During the mapping, they discovered just part of the canyon before they had to go back to the research station. But when bad weather came in again, the ship went back and mapped more of the canyon. They were working in waves up to 13 feet high and super powerful winds, but they managed to get about 15 hours of data to complete their map. On the way back to Australia, they stopped one last time, and now they've got a full picture of the canyon. Studying it is helping scientists learn more about the history of glaciers and the interaction between the Antarctic ice sheet and the ocean. Now, there's a frozen lake in Antarctica called Lake Enigma. For a long time, people thought the lake was completely frozen solid. But during one expedition, researchers found that under the thick ice, there was a layer of liquid water about 40 feet deep. To learn more, they drilled through the ice and sent down a camera to explore what was hiding in the lake's depths. The lake's water, which they think comes from the nearby amorphous glacier through a secret underground pathway, was filled with strange microbial life. These tiny microbes lived in mats that covered the lake bed. Some of the mats were thin and spiky, and others looked like crumpled carpets, or even small tree-like shapes that grew up to 16 inches. Many of the microbes could make their own food through photosynthesis, just like plants do, and it gave the lake a high amount of oxygen. One of the coolest discoveries was a type of microbe which usually lives in low-oxygen places. Lake Enigma might be similar to environments on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, so it could mean that these moons also have hidden water under their ice and possibly microbial life too. One more mind-boggling discovery from Antarctica is tiny pieces of amber in mudstone, found here for the very first time. It took scientists years of studying incredibly well-preserved fossilized roots, pollen, and spores that they found back in 2017. Amber proves that resin-producing trees once grew in Antarctica, part of a lush rainforest that existed near the South Pole during the mid-Cretaceous period. Back then, disclaimer, I wasn't around then, the trees would have had to survive through months of darkness during the long Antarctic winters. Scientists believe they adapted by going dormant for a long time. The amber pieces the scientists found are tiny, but they are beautiful shades of yellow and orange with bumpy surfaces that show how the resin flowed out of the trees. This resin likely leaked out to protect the trees from insects. It was preserved because water quickly covered it and kept it safe from sunlight and air. A scientist was browsing through satellite images for brown trails of penguin waste and found 4 new colonies of emperor penguins at the base of the globe. These new colonies likely have been around for years, though 3 of them are rather small, with fewer than 1,000 breeding penguins each. One of the new colonies was found close to a place called the Lazarev Ice Shelf, where there used to be a larger penguin colony. They thought this colony went extinct in 2019, but it seems the penguins have just moved a bit because of changing sea ice conditions. So studying them can help us learn more about how emperor penguins adapt to changes in the environment. Now, there used to be a giant river system in Antarctica 40 million years ago. Researchers found proof of it after studying soft sediments and hard rocks from the frozen seabed. They looked at tiny bits of radioactive elements, like uranium and lead, and learned that the deeper dirt came from the time of dinosaurs. The dirt closer to the surface was younger and had an interesting pattern, like the kind you see in river deltas today, such as in the Mississippi River or Rio Grande. Scientists found tiny signs of life in the sand. The river that once flowed here started in the Trans-Antarctic Mountains and traveled 930 miles before it reached the sea. Researchers kept studying newer layers of dirt from about 20 million years ago. They hope this will help them predict what the Earth's weather patterns might be like in the future. So what comes to your mind when you hear the word Antarctica? Most likely, cold, snow, ice, and penguins. Yet, this is one of the least explored regions in the world that hides many strange and unique things. Check them out. You don't have to go to Antarctica to see this weird thing. All you need to do is open Google Earth and move to one of the southernmost islands of Antarctica, King George Island. Recently, internet users have noticed a large and pretty strange cave entrance there. Where does this wide, dark passage lead? People started making suggestions. It's the entrance to a secret base or some laboratory. This is the part of the spaceship that crashed there thousands of years ago. This is the door to the ancient city of Antarctica. Perhaps there's a giant rock mountain with an ancient cave beneath all this snow and ice. Well, there's some ideas. Users have calculated the approximate dimensions of this cave. It might be about 74 feet high and 250 feet wide. You could hide a Boeing passenger jet in there. Nature probably created this entrance. This is a logical explanation, but there are 2 strange factors. First, take a look at the foot of the mountain. It seems that there are steps there. They're dark in color, as if they're made of stone. And if you look closely, you can notice something similar to human footprints. Has anyone entered this cave? Or maybe someone is still living there now. The second oddity is the disappearance of the mysterious finding. For the first time, people noticed it in a Google Maps snap in 2007. Then the entrance disappeared. Then it reappeared a few years later. After that, it vanished. And in 2022, people saw it again. Perhaps old snow melts, a new layer falls, and then the wind blows it away and the cycle repeats. But the alleged steps leading deep into the cave make one doubt the natural origin of this tunnel. You can easily find the coordinates on the internet and visit the cave via Google Earth. You might see something there and tell the world. There's another strange thing people discovered with the help of Google Earth. In 2020, one user found a strange object that looked like a giant ship 100 miles off the coast of Antarctica. It was covered with ice and snow and lying on its side. It looked like a cruise ship. You could notice the windows, the deck, and the bridge. But not all people agreed with this. Some claimed it was a spaceship. Others said it was some kind of secret building. The user who first noticed the ship stated that its size was about 400 feet, which is the perfect length for a passenger vessel. But what is this ship doing in such a remote place in the middle of a glacier? How did it get here? Who was its captain? No one has found the answers to these questions yet. In 2016, people using Google Earth discovered a photo of an unknown sea monster floating off the coast of Antarctica. This creature resembled a giant squid with a length of about 200 feet. This is slightly shorter than 3 train cars. Just imagine this kraken swimming in Antarctica's dark, icy waters and dragging to the bottom everything it meets on its way. Maybe it's the great and terrible Chulu, or one of its offspring. You will quickly notice this blood-red waterfall among Antarctica's endless, dazzling white landscapes. Don't worry, it's not blood. For many centuries, the waterfall has been painting snow in a bright red color. The stream flows straight out of a white iceberg. Let's look inside and find out what's happening there. Millions of years ago, there was a small crystal-clear pond, but then a glacier formed around it. A thick layer of ice and snow blocks sunlight, heat, and oxygen access. For millennia, the reservoir remained in this cold vacuum. But at one point, the water made a hole in the icy wall and broke out. When this salty water comes into contact with oxygen, it immediately turns scarlet or rusty. Antarctica is the only place where you can find such a unique natural phenomenon. One of the driest places on Earth is located in Antarctica. It's one of the most lifeless deserts in the world, the McMurdo Dry Valleys. In this desert, you won't see the scorching sun, hot sand, and cacti. A desert means a place with a lack of precipitation and life. The McMurdo Dry Valleys meet these parameters, but this place is also unique for Antarctica, since you won't find glaciers there. Despite the frost, ice can't form in the desert because it hasn't rained for millions of years there. It also never snows. A strong wind coming from the mountains reaches speeds up to 200 miles per hour. It would be difficult for you to stay on your feet there. The wind is filled with moisture. It heats up and evaporates all the liquid and snow in the desert because of its high speed. Only dry air reaches the ground. But you can find several lakes there. They don't freeze, only thanks to the high concentration of salt. The water is so salty that large life forms can't develop there. But scientists have found microscopic organisms near the lakes. 20 million years ago, Antarctica was filled with swamps and trees and swarming with insects and animals. But now, it resembles the surface of Mars, literally. Scientists and astronauts are exploring such regions as the McMurdo Dry Valleys, since the natural conditions there are similar to those on the Red Planet. So, before you go to Mars, you can practice living in similar places on Earth. Also, scientists discovered an underwater world in the Antarctic filled with hundreds of amphipods, crustacean animals similar to shrimp. Wait a minute, it happened in the Antarctic? But the McMurdo Dry Valleys are located in Antarctica. Well, the words are very similar, but what is the difference? Oh, and don't forget the Arctic. The Antarctic is the region in the southernmost part of Earth that houses the continent of Antarctica, and the Arctic is another land altogether. They have the same natural conditions, frost, ice, and snow, but they're located in different parts of the planet. The Arctic is at the North Pole, Antarctica is at the South Pole. Now, back to the discovery. Scientists put forward theories that the ice of the Antarctic hides a vast network of freshwater rivers and lakes. And in 2022, they found a new ecosystem. Researchers explored the Antarctic Ross ice shelf and its underwater rivers. This is a massive piece of ice floating in the ocean. A team from New Zealand used a special drilling rig equipped with a hot water supply to drill a hole 1,640 feet deep. That's more than the height of the Empire State Building. Then, they lowered some video cameras and saw thousands of crustaceans swimming in different directions. So it seems they're very unorganized. In the waters of the Antarctic, you can also meet some of the scariest creatures on the planet. These are sea spiders. They got this name because they resemble land spiders, but they're actually a species of marine arthropods. And unlike land spiders, those in the ocean are much larger. They look like 8 strong legs without a body. One such spider can be a dinner plate in width. Some of them have no eyes and have proboscises instead of jaws. Sea spiders are poorly studied because they live in deep, cold waters. Antarctica hides many little-known animals. There are long tunnels in its glaciers leading to scary darkness. On this cold continent, people have found the remains of giant dinosaurs and other ancient creatures, such as the ancestors of modern ducks. Many underground rivers and lakes hide unexplored wildlife. Even the ice here can be weird. Take a look at these striped icebergs. They have blue, black, green, and turquoise shapes. The color depends on the conditions of the water during freezing. For example, green lines appear because of algae, blue ones form when the water freezes too quickly. Okay, I'm freezing. Time to go thaw somewhere warmer. Hawaii. Yeah.
Strange things occur in the cold waters of Antarctica. One of these things happened to a ship called Jenny. It was a small schooner whose history began in 1822. The boat and its crew set sail and disappeared a year later. For 18 years, the ship was considered sunk. People forgot about it, but in 1840, the vessel reminded the world of itself. That year, the whaling ship Hope sailed through the Drake Channel in Antarctica. The crew members noticed a ship among icebergs. It was the schooner Jenny. It was floating slowly in the dark, with no signs of life. The captain of the Hope, Mr. Brighton, gave the order to approach the mysterious vessel. They thought it was some creepy ghost ship, but as they came closer, they noticed crew members on the deck. The sailors of the Hope called out to them, but received no answer. This time, it became clear that something terrible had happened to the Jenny. When Brighton boarded, he realized that the Jenny crew members weren't missing. They were here. Frozen people stood like statues. Brighton went down to the lower deck and found the captain. He was sitting frozen at the table, holding a pen. Brighton looked at the logbook. The last record was made on May 4th, 1823. The captain wrote that he was the only living member of the crew. They spent 71 days without food. It seemed that the ship got lost in the sea because its captain went off course or sailed into an iceberg, but no one knew for sure. After that, nobody ever saw the Jenny again. According to rumors, the crew of the Hope abandoned the frozen ship and left it to drift in the cold waters. According to other rumors, this whole story is fiction. The story of the Jenny was described in a German magazine in the middle of the 19th century. Still, there was no further evidence of the ship's existence. Already in our time, Cambridge University decided to explore the case of the Jenny. The researchers discovered that one of the crew members of the Hope, who didn't disclose his name, told someone the legend of the frozen ship. Someone shared the story with another guy, and it was published in a German magazine called Globus. And that's all. There was no other evidence. One of the most famous ghost ships was the Mary Celeste, and there's no doubt about its existence. The history of this vessel was documented in court. People wrote about it in newspapers, but the most exciting thing is that the ship continued to be used even after 10 people disappeared from its deck. The history of the Mary Celeste began in Canada in 1861. When it was first built, the ship was called the Amazon. It changed captains several times, and it also hit some rocks. The boat was sold, bought, then sold again, repaired, and sailed under the name Mary Celeste. In 1872, it had a new captain, Benjamin Briggs. He was a decent, brave man with a lot of experience in navigation. He had a beloved wife, a daughter, and a son. When he went on his last voyage, he took his wife and daughter with him, and his son stayed in America. In November of 1872, the Mary Celeste sailed from the port in New York with 10 people on board and disappeared. 8 days later, another ship, the Dei Gratia, also left New York and followed the same route. Dei Gratia's captain, David Morehouse, noticed the Mary Celeste and immediately realized something was wrong. The ship was moving too freely, as if no one was controlling it. The captain tried to contact the crew members, but no one answered him. Then, together with other sailors, he climbed aboard the Mary Celeste. The ship was in good condition. There was no damage. The hold was slightly filled with water, but it could be easily pumped out. Everything seemed fine, but one lifeboat was missing. The crew members' valuables were in their cabins. The cargo was in the hold. The supplies of water and food were untouched. Judging by the records in the logbook, the ship was caught in a storm, but it was not too strong. Other ships also sailed through this storm, but nothing bad happened to them. The last record was dated November 25th, and it claimed that everything was fine. The sails of the Mary Celeste were slightly damaged, but perhaps it happened after the crew had disappeared. The whole ship was in excellent condition, but what made the people leave it? Part of the crew of the Dei Gratia stayed on board the Mary Celeste to bring it to dry land. Everything went well. They delivered the ship to the closest port. Next, the captain of the Dei Gratia appeared before the court and told about what had happened. However, the prosecutor and the judge didn't want to believe in the story of the Mary Celeste. They were sure the captain got rid of the ship's crew to get money for its cargo. According to the maritime laws of that time, if you found a ghost ship with valuable cargo, then a substantial part of this cargo belonged to you. So, many people thought that David Morehouse decided to earn some money. This version seemed to be more valid than the one about the mysterious disappearance of 10 people. Fortunately, no one accused the captain of committing a crime. They thanked him for his service and gave him a monetary reward. However, his reputation was damaged, which greatly affected his career, as many believed he attacked the crew of the Mary Celeste. But even after this terrible case, trial, and investigation, the story was not over. The Mary Celeste was still an expensive and efficient vessel. It sailed several times, but then one captain crashed it into the reefs to get insurance. The court revealed this deception and accused the captain of intentional property damage. The story of the Mary Celeste became famous all over the world. People began to build their theories, realistic and not. Someone believed the ship had sailed through the Bermuda Triangle, but this version was quickly refuted, as the route of the Mary Celeste passed thousands of miles away from the Bermuda region. Did the Kraken or another giant monster attack the ship? Nope. Since the boat was found in almost perfect condition, there were no signs of a struggle. One of the most popular versions was that the crew of the Mary Celeste stole some valuable cargo and sailed to Spain on the rescue boat. However, those who knew Captain Benjamin Briggs said he was a good, honest man. Besides, he had a son in New York, and Briggs would never leave him. A more thorough investigation revealed that a series of accidental circumstances could have caused the disappearance of the ship's crew. Before its last voyage, the vessel delivered coal. Perhaps the pump intended for pumping water got clogged with coal after that, and when the ship got into a storm, the hold filled with water and the pump broke. The captain couldn't understand the amount of water because numerous barrels in the cargo hold blocked the view. Benjamin Briggs assumed it was dangerous to stay on the ship during a storm, so he evacuated with the passengers on a lifeboat. Perhaps they were close to land and decided to sail there, but the storm intensified and overturned the boat. Also, one record in the log journal said that the chronometer was faulty. It was a device that helped to determine your location at sea using longitude. Briggs got lost and didn't know which way to sail. The storm was strong, and he couldn't determine whether the ship would sink. Perhaps Briggs decided to leave the ship in a rescue boat when he saw the coast of the Azores. The uniqueness of this ghost ship case is that, unlike many others, you can investigate it yourself. There's a lot of information about the Mary Celeste on the internet. There are documentaries and research articles. Perhaps you'll be able to notice something that others haven't seen and solve the mystery of the disappearance of 10 people.
The South Pole is more than penguins and endless snow. There's a hidden ghost world within it. Look, it's right here on the globe. Don't confuse Antarctica with the Arctic, which is at the top of our maps. Much smaller in size, and, let's face it, way less mysterious. The ice sheet covering Antarctica is about 1 to 3 miles thick, which is up to 16 Eiffel Towers stacked on each other. This massive blanket hides the true features and contours of Antarctica's land. We still don't know much about this mysterious continent, and it is ice and snow that are to blame. We still don't even know the true shape and size of this continent. Mapping Antarctica without some huge shovels is an incredibly hard task. But satellites learned to penetrate the ice with their cameras. And now we know there's actually an enormous, dramatic ancient landscape beneath the snow. The ghost of the past. About 90 million years ago, Antarctica was a much warmer place. It was actually a lush rainforest with tons of plants and probably teeming with life. It even had rivers flowing through it. Then the ice came. This happened about 34 million years ago, during the transition from the Eocene to the Oligocene, when our planet cooled significantly. It was the beginning of one of our several ice ages. The land remained, but now was hidden under ice and snow that got thicker and thicker. To a regular eye, Antarctica turned into a white desert, vast, flat, and featureless. Time went on. This massive ice sheet moved around, smoothing and shifting the ground beneath it. Over the millions of years, it changed what the land looked like. Now, if we looked under the ice, it wouldn't hold any signs of the original South Pole, except for one place. In areas where the ice is especially thick and doesn't move much, like in East Antarctica, it has actually worked the other way around. It became like a super thick blanket that protects the land. Normally, things like wind or rain slowly wear away the ground over time, changing its shape. But since we have this protective ice blanket, it prevents these natural processes from reaching the stuff underneath. So, the ground stayed almost the same for millions of years, like it's been frozen in time. This special area near the Aurora and Schmidt subglacial basins has become the ghost of Antarctica's landscape. This place was barely touched even since it was first covered in snow 34 million years ago. This is a historical footprint, a place that can tell us what Antarctica's ground looked like before it became a freezing nightmare. As scientists peered under East Antarctica, they saw an amazing ghost. The traces of the rivers that were flowing there millions of years ago, various valleys, and some weird little islands, as well as 3 big chunks of land shaped like the letter U. Hey, what's that all about? You see, the continents on our planet are moving constantly, sliding along the red-hot lava mantle like cereal on milk. Over history, they came together and broke apart several times. Hundreds of millions of years ago, several continents were a part of one enormous Gondwana. Antarctica was one of them. It used to be one huge landmass. But when Gondwana broke apart, the poor continent got stretched by tectonic forces. Parts of land were pulled away from each other. Whoosh! And they got torn apart. And that's how we got these big chunks or blocks of land under thick layers of ice. In any case, scientists now want to explore this ghost a bit more. But to study it deeply, they need to actually drill down through the ice, like using a straw to get to the bottom of a thick shake. This will help them pick up some rocks and dirt from way below to learn more about the Earth's history and climate. Antarctica is the 5th largest continent in the world, approximately bigger than the entirety of Europe or Australia, competing with the entire South America in size. Aside from East Antarctica, we discussed there are several more regions: Antarctica Peninsula, South Pole, West Antarctica, and the Ross Sea. The continent is basically a frozen sandbox, and all its hidden, mysterious landscape is actually less explored than Mars's terrain. We only know for sure that without ice, it wouldn't just be flat and empty, but an entire world full of big mountains, huge canyons, and even fiery volcanoes. Some of these volcanoes are so huge that they peak above the layers of snow. In West Antarctica alone, there are at least 138 volcanoes, though only about 8 or 9 are active today. One of the craziest ones is Mount Erebus, the southernmost volcano and the tallest one on the continent, about 12,500 feet high. And deep beneath the ice sheet, this guy hosts incredible, beautiful subvolcanic caves. The temperatures there are warm enough for t-shirts. The Antarctic Peninsula, or Lesser Antarctica, looks like a bunch of mountainous islands deeply underground. It has newer volcanic rocks that are part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is like a giant circle of volcanoes and earthquake zones around the Pacific Ocean. The Greater Antarctica is a huge part, almost as big as Australia. It consists of East Antarctica and the South Pole. Beneath the ice, it's a place of rocks that have been around for a very, very long time, including the special zone we mentioned. You probably know that Antarctica is nearly devoid of humans. No wonder, with a mean temperature of about -46 degrees Fahrenheit. But even though this place is horrifyingly cold and deserted, life still clings on. You guessed it, in the underworld. In 2017, scientists found DNA traces of algae, moss, and even possibly unknown small animals in the deep caves. That means that even in such crazy conditions, there are still unique ecosystems thriving in little isolated warm pockets beneath the snow. There was another incredible find beneath Antarctica's Ross Ice Shelf, a lively ecosystem vibing within an underground river. Scientists have long suspected that Antarctica's underworld should have some freshwater lakes and rivers. One day, a satellite spotted a groove there. They decided to explore it and used a hot water drill to melt their way through the ice. As they reached the underworld, they dropped a camera into one of those hidden fresh rivers. And at first, they thought they'd find just some rocks or something. But instead, they stumbled upon hundreds of amphipods, tiny shrimp-like creatures. Little ones instantly swarmed around the lens. Shrimps blocked the camera and scientists couldn't check out what they wanted to. Pretty funny, but at least that means that there really is an important ecosystem deep within Antarctica. Now, they're gonna explore it. And all this is just the beginning of the mysterious underworld. Antarctica's snow also hides the deepest canyon on Earth under the Denman Glacier. Well, Mariana Trench is still the deepest point on Earth, but it's a part of the oceanic crust, geologically speaking. Also, in 1958, explorers found a huge mountain range under the ice, as big and tall as the famous Alps Mountains. The range stretched for about 745 miles with peaks as high as 1.7 miles. And all this magnificence is buried under tons of ice. Who knows what else we might find there? Antarctica holds about 60% of our entire planet's freshwater, which means it would be pretty bad if it melted. For example, there's this Doomsday Glacier, officially known as Thwaites Glacier. It's a huge ice formation, about the size of Florida, and it's melting right now. Every year, the sea levels rise by 4% because of it. If this guy melts away completely, the sea levels all around the world will increase by 2 feet, which might not sound like a lot, but it would be catastrophic for coastal areas. Luckily, researchers have found that even if its ice shelf were to collapse in the next 50 years, the glacier itself wouldn't retreat as quickly as they feared. It's still losing ice rapidly, but it would be quite a slow process. There's something really bizarre going on at these 12 points scattered across the Earth. The vile vortices, as they're called, are these creepy spots over the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, and the North and South Poles, where weird forces seem to take over. You've probably heard of the most famous one, the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes have mysteriously disappeared in this area, which is located between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. But what most people don't realize is that the Bermuda Triangle actually has 11 siblings, and these other spots can be even more terrifying. Let's start with Mohenjo-Daro. This was a thriving city located in what is now Pakistan. Built around 2500 before the Common Era, this urban center was once home to about 40,000 people. But then, suddenly, people abandoned it by the year 1700 before the Common Era. In the 1940s, an archaeologist discovered 39 human skeletons at the site, which fueled the theory that the city was invaded by some other civilization at some point. But honestly, it's hard to confirm that, since archaeology doesn't really explain the city's sudden destruction or the disappearance of its people. It's led to a bunch of bizarre theories. One of them talks about an ancient extraterrestrial race that might have lived there, and a malevolent wind that swept through the city. Another ancient city with a similar mystery is the Great Zimbabwe. Its construction began in the 11th century, and at its peak it housed up to 18,000 people. But for reasons we'll probably never fully understand, it was abandoned in the 15th century. Archaeologists were really interested in this place, and that's when things got even weirder. They found 8 of these birds, now called the Zimbabwe birds. These soapstone sculptures were found sitting on stone columns that were over 90 centimeters tall. Nothing like them has ever been found anywhere else, and their meaning is still a total mystery. Some think each bird represents a new king, but other theories suggest they were ancient animals very dear to the people who lived there. Adding to the mystery, local legends talk about a strange, short man who's sometimes seen wandering around, but he always disappears before anyone can get close. Then there's Easter Island, another one of the 12 vile vortices. It's located in the eastern Pacific Ocean, and it's famous for its nearly 1,000 enormous statues called moai. We still don't know what they mean, or how they were made. Some of them are almost 30 feet tall and weigh as much as 80 tons. Today, it wouldn't be that tough to move and carve these statues, but we're talking about a period between the years 1100 and 1680. So nobody really knows how they did it. Some specialists believe these statues were carried across the island, while others think they were pushed on log rollers. But the most bizarre theories suggest extraterrestrials were involved. Algeria is another land rich in ancient mysteries, and one of the most fascinating is something called the Jeddars. These are 13 monuments with square stone bases and angular mounds, built between the 4th and 7th centuries. But the weird part is, no one knows their purpose. One of them had an inscription in Latin, but it was so worn down that the message was nearly impossible to read. The best guess so far is that these monuments were probably tombs for royalty, although no one knows exactly who was supposed to be buried there. What we do know is that there are many myths related to strange disappearances in the region. The next mysterious spot is located south of Tokyo in the Pacific Ocean, and it's called the Dragon's Triangle. Does that name ring a bell? Yep, Just like the Bermuda Triangle, this area is known for strange disappearances of airplanes and ships. One of the most chilling stories dates back to 1945, when a plane allegedly vanished. The pilot supposedly sent a radio transmission right before the aircraft disappeared, claiming that something strange was happening in the sky, like it was opening up or something. While this story is definitely eerie, the truth behind it and many other Dragon's Triangle legends is still up for debate. If you type Hamakulia volcano into Google Earth, you'll find it located in Hawaii's Ring of Fire. But this place is so shrouded in mystery that it's hard to find much information about it. Some legends speak of unusual electrical energy being detected in the area, and there's even a story about an eyewitness who claimed to see a plane flying over it totally disappear from the radar. Another eerie spot is the South Atlantic Anomaly, which is an area on Earth where natural radiation flows out of control. While this doesn't affect our daily lives on the surface, it has a pretty big impact on Earth's atmosphere. The radiation there is so intense that it can knock out the onboard computers of spacecraft and interfere with the data collected by satellites passing through the area. To deal with this, specialists had to add an additional shield to the International Space Station. The South Atlantic Anomaly is also linked to a weird event that astronauts experience called cosmic ray visual phenomena. They've reported seeing random flashes of light or shooting stars out there in space, but it's all just some kind of illusion. From wild radiation to strange seismic activity. The Wharton Basin in the Indian Ocean is a place known for unusual tectonic events. In April of 2012, a massive earthquake measuring magnitude 8.6 hit the region. This was considered the largest intraplate earthquake ever recorded, meaning it happened within a tectonic plate rather than at its boundary. This caught the attention of scientists, who now speculate that the region might be forming a new boundary between the Australian and Indian plates. But for now, this is all still one big mystery. Now let's head to the Pacific Ocean. More specifically, to the New Hebrides Trench. This submarine trench is about 750 miles long and 45 miles wide. It formed when the Australian plate slid under the New Hebrides plate. There's no doubt that this is one of the creepiest and deepest spots in the ocean. The danger isn't just down in the deep sea either, as this trench has been connected to several earthquakes that affected New Caledonia and Vanuatu. This area also has some strange features. For example, when scientists explored it, they didn't find a single grenadier fish down there. This type of fish is one of the most common deep-sea creatures you would expect to see in trenches around the Pacific. So why aren't they around the New Hebrides Trench? Maybe they know something we don't. The two remaining vile vortices are the North and South Poles. These two are on the opposite ends of the planet, but they share one thing in common: strange disappearances. One of the most famous stories from the North Pole happened in 1897. 3 brave explorers set out on a journey to reach the North Pole using a hot air balloon. But they never completed their mission. Their mysterious disappearance remains one of the most intriguing, unsolved mysteries in the history of Arctic exploration. The South Pole is also known for similar mysteries. It's believed that hundreds of people may be buried beneath the snow and ice of the coldest continent on Earth. Even with all the advancements in technology and knowledge, the South Pole can still be extremely dangerous for anyone who ventures there. The temperatures can drop to almost minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and the winds can get up to 200 miles per hour. And that's definitely enough reason to stay away. Now that you're familiar with the 12 vile vortices, let me tell you something even stranger. If you look at a map, you'll see that these places are arranged in a way that looks pretty similar across the globe. Here's the weird part. If you connect these spots where unexplained events have occurred, you actually form the geometric shape of an icosahedron. This could be just a huge coincidence, but the fact that these mystery spots align with this shape makes them even more intriguing.
Imagine you're surfing a perfect wave, and then it suddenly freezes. Well, it sure sounds creepy, but couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Wrong. You can see mind-blowing frozen waves in Antarctica. These waves occur when the ice gets compressed, and the ever-increasing pressure squeezes the air bubbles out. As for the beautiful blue color, it's the result of ice melting and refreezing. When the summer begins, an ordinary-looking river in Colombia transforms into a liquid rainbow. Caño Cristales, also known as the most beautiful river in the world, sparkles in 5 colors: red, black, green, blue, and yellow. It only looks like this for 6 months of the year because the aquatic plant that gives it the bright hues needs the right water level and amount of sunshine to use its magic. Australia is home to a unique horizontal waterfall on the coast of the Kimberley region. It's really just a fast tidal flow moving through 2 narrow-aligned rocks. The tides can rise 30 feet. The falls reverse whenever the tide changes. Also down under is the biggest single rock in the world. It's so big that it even looks like a large hill. It has a circumference of 6 miles and is 1,150 feet high. The edges are eroded since the rock has been around forever. These mud brick buildings are 7 stories high and were built out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. The ground floors were used for keeping livestock and grains, and the upper levels were places for socializing and catching good views. Antelope Canyon in Arizona, also known as the place where water runs through rock, has 2 sections of slotted canyons. Throughout the years, the water running through sandstone has created a picturesque formation like no other. If you ever set foot on the arid soil of the Namib Desert in Namibia, prepare yourself for an eerie picture. You'll see countless circular patches between 6 feet to 50 feet in diameter. Organized in a honeycomb-like pattern, they stretch across 1,500 miles toward the horizon. These patches are also known as fairy circles, and you might be disappointed by the explanation of this mystery. No one knows for sure the origin of these circles, even though there are numerous theories, from the radioactivity of the soil to the activity of sand termites. Mount Haleakala in Hawaii is one of the quietest places in the world. National park managers nearly failed to find any sounds to measure here. The place translates from Hawaiian as House of the Sun. It formed thanks to a volcano that got active 1 million years ago. The lava flows built up over the years and grew into a mountain. It has its own climate and weather that's impossible to predict. It takes almost a week by ship from South Africa to travel to the world's most isolated settlement of Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. You'd need special permission from the local government to visit as a tourist. About 300 locals all treat each other as family, grow their own food, and keep their island impeccably clean. Daintree Forest in Australia is the oldest rainforest in the world. It has been around for over 100 million years. Daintree is home to some unique animal species, 12,000 different types of insects, and about half of Australia's frog, butterfly, and bat population. The rainforest also has around 3,000 types of plant species. Rocks that travel are called sailing stones because they seem to move across the dry lake bed of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. As the rocks move, they leave behind a creepy trail that used to have scientists baffled. After all, some of the boulders weigh more than 660 pounds. On top of that, some of the trails are curved, while others are mostly straight, with unexpected turns to the right or the left. But eventually, NASA experts cracked the mystery in 2006. It turns out that in winter, the lake fills with water, covering the boulders at the bottom in ice. And since ice is pretty buoyant, underwater movements and winds make the stones move across the lakebed. In their wake, they leave bizarre tracks, only seen when the water evaporates in the summer. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is often called the lightning capital of the world. Thunderstorms arise here 300 days of the year, with a peak in September. Sometimes there are up to 200 flashes in a minute. It happens because cool air coming from the surrounding Andes meets with warm air from the Caribbean Sea and generates electricity. Some places on Earth have less gravity than others. Canada's Hudson Bay, for example, used to be covered by a super thick and heavy glacier during the last ice age. The ice had pushed tons of rock mass outward when it started to melt. The smaller the mass of an object, the less gravity it has. It'll take another 5,000 years for the Earth to get into its original shape in this spot. Until then, you'll always weigh less here than anywhere else in the world. Five Flower Lake in China's Zhoujiago Valley changes its color from amber yellow to emerald green, dark jade to light turquoise, and sometimes coral. It never freezes thanks to underwater hot springs and never melts or dries up, unlike other neighboring lakes. The locals believe it's made up of pieces of a mirror that fell down from the sky. The surrounding valley has some narrow conic karst landforms, spectacular waterfalls, around 140 bird species, and giant panda, along with other endangered plant and animal species. Cape Denison in the Commonwealth Bay in Antarctica is the windiest place on the planet. It has unusual downslope winds. They are formed because of the continent's dome shape and the always cold climate. These winds are so fast and strong, they ruin the measuring instruments and the masts they are attached to. The record speed so far was 200 miles per hour. The Sahara Desert, which takes up 10% of the African continent, is extremely hot and dry. That's why it's one of the top places with the clearest skies. There's hardly ever a cloud above it. This, plus the remoteness from any civilization, makes it one of the best spots for stargazing. In Denmark, people experience blackout-type effects on a pretty regular basis. Just look how weird it is. But it gets even more bizarre when you find out that birds are the cause of this unusual phenomenon. Every spring and fall, millions of starlings begin their annual migration from Sweden, Finland, and Norway toward Britain, Belgium, and France. Denmark is the lucky place where you can observe Sort Sol, the Danish name for black sun. The birds travel in large flocks, which makes it easier to exchange information and stay warm. Before the birds land, they perform movements that look like dancing, but in fact, they are making different formations in an attempt to shoo predators away. And although the birds fly in highly synchronized patterns, people think that the huge flock changes its shape chaotically. The dark sun lasts only 20 minutes during sunset, and you have to be either fast or lucky to see this phenomenon. The secret of the cotton candy color of Pink Sand Beach in Barbuda is the crushed corals on it and tiny single-celled red organisms living beneath them. You can see that famous shade when the waves are strong enough to wash that mix ashore. The secret of impeccable cleanliness of this place is that it has no public facilities and is less crowded than other Caribbean islands. It took thousands of years to form Picaninny Ponds in Australia. This whole time, underground freshwater was slowly moving to the surface through limestone. It formed a large underwater cavern with white limestone walls. You'd need a special permit to dive here, and it's definitely worth it. Batara Gorge Waterfall has 3 natural bridges for anyone to walk across, take awesome pictures, and even have picnics. The waterfall is a result of limestone erosion that's been going on for millions of years, even though it looks like someone punched a hole right in the middle. It's located in the village of Tannerine, which is just 2 hours away from the capital Beirut. A village in the Meghalaya state in India is known as the wettest on the planet, according to the Guinness World Records. The average annual rainfall here is about 470 inches. It's a result of warm, moist monsoon winds coming from the Bay of Bengal, bringing clouds full of rain. It flows into rivers and waterfalls and never stops. The locals that work in the fields always wear basket-like covers to protect themselves somehow. The village of Leknes, with a population of about 3,500, is located in Norway, above the Arctic Circle. It has an unusually warm climate compared to other places in the same latitude. In January, the average minimum is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and rarely drops below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. July average temperature is 53 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty regular for many places in Europe.
It's been there for over 3 billion years. But now, some of the Earth's oldest crust is falling apart. Today, our continents seem stuck in place. But over a long time, they've moved and shifted around a lot. It's all thanks to tectonic activity, which makes part of Earth's surface slowly slide around like pieces of a giant puzzle. Some of the most stable parts of these puzzle pieces are called cratons. Cratons are super old and strong sections of rock that form the roots of continents and keep them together. The North American craton is one of them. It makes up a big part of the United States, about half of Canada, and most of Greenland. Scientists have singled out about 35 of these big ancient cratons around the world. They've mostly stayed in the same place for hundreds of millions of years because of how strong they are. But in 2014, they discovered that cratons might not be as indestructible as they thought. Some cratons had lost parts of their strong roots because of certain geologic processes and became thinner. It looks like cratons could become less stable if they go through more tectonic changes. In 2024, scientists at China University of Geosciences analyzed an ancient landmass called the North China Craton, or NCC for short. They wanted to learn more about how some of Earth's oldest rock regions can break apart. This process of cratons disintegrating is called decratonization. The NCC is so interesting to study because it has three main parts: the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc, and the Trans-North China Orogen, a zone that lies between the two blocks. Scientists found that during the Mesozoic era, the Eastern Bloc lost its deep ancient roots because of the strong Earth movements called tectonomagmatic events. So scientists wanted to see exactly how the processes in the mantle and the movements of Earth's plates led to the breaking down of the NCC. They created 4D models showing how the NCC's shape changed over time, including its surface shape, how its layers stretched, and the way earthquake waves moved through it. They found that a section of the tectonic plate slid beneath the craton and then began to roll back. This rolling and stretching made the strong rock thin out and eventually lose stability. All this started around 200 million years ago, back during the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs were rocking the world. The North China Craton isn't the only place where this decratonization process can happen. Other cratons, like those in North America, South America, and China's Yangtze region, may have gone through similar changes. Scientists say this shows how the continents on Earth have slowly changed and evolved over billions of years. And it looks like, when it comes to geology, there's no place that is 100% safe from changes, but it's no cause for alarm. You don't notice this, but our planet never stops moving and is perfectly normal. But sometimes, this movement still brings dramatic changes. In 2017, scientists made an official announcement that Zealandia can be called a new continent. The continental shelves of this mysterious continent are lying at a depth of around 3,280 feet below sea level. The nearest oceanic crust dives even deeper, at 9,800 feet below that. Geologists have gone deep down to collect rocks from the ocean floor. They've found that, unlike the nearby oceanic crust, which is made up of fresh basaltic rocks, the crust around New Zealand is a mix of ancient granite, limestone, and sandstone. All this screams continental crust. Plus, scientists have discovered a narrow strip of oceanic crust that separates Australia from the hidden land of Zealandia. It means these two are separate continents. 85 million years ago, Zealandia decided to break free from the supercontinent Gondwana. Millions of years later, the mighty Pacific Plate, the heavyweight champion of tectonic plates, decided to take a dive beneath Zealandia's continental crust. And that's how the root of Zealandia, that connection to its continental crust, broke off and went into the depths below. And that's not all the tectonic news from this part of the world. 120 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica were a single piece of land. They went their separate ways, but Antarctica didn't leave empty-handed. Today, there's an oceanic plateau in the Indian Ocean. Long ago, it was connected to another lost continent, the Kerguelen microcontinent. Scientists believe that it made a land bridge between India and Antarctica. To find out what it was like, we can look at a tiny archipelago in the southern Indian Ocean. These islands are all that is left of the ancient landmass. They have a cold climate and feature glaciers because they're so close to Antarctica. But in the past, the weather here must have been temperate with plenty of rainfall. The animals and plants would have been similar to those that live in tropical regions today. Another lost and found continent isn't hiding in the ocean, but under Europe. It's called Greater Adria, and it collided with Europe and started to sink under it around 100 million years ago. Today it lies beneath Italy, Greece, and the Balkans. Its size and even shape match that of Greenland, the world's largest island. Greater Adria is no longer visible, but it left some clues. Part of it was embedded in the Alps. The other chunks are part of present-day Italy and Croatia, on the other side of the Adriatic Sea. Limestone rocks from the former continent started to change once they were under the European landmass. Great heat and pressure spread over tens of millions of years changed their structure. And that's when the limestone left the chat and the marble took its place. Greater Adria wasn't a solid piece of land like the big continent we see today, but more like a giant shallow shelf underwater. Over time, sand, mud, and other stuff settled on this shelf and slowly turned into rock. Greater Adria might have been a little like Zealandia or the Florida Keys, a chain of small islands sitting in a shallow sea. Above the water, there were probably lots of little islands and archipelagos, and beneath the waves, there were colorful coral reefs filled with marine life. If you lived back then and had a scuba tank, it would have been an amazing place to dive and explore. So, with all the things going on with the Cratons, who knows? We could see a new continent in the future. Plus, studying the Earth's crust even deeper can change history as we know it. Scientists in Copenhagen have made an amazing discovery about the real birthplace of Scandinavia, and it's not where we thought. After studying sand and rock from remote parts of Finland, they found out that Scandinavia's roots actually came from Greenland over 3.75 billion years ago. This means the area where Nordic countries are now is 250 million years older than the scientists had previously believed. And we now know, thanks to the tiny crystals called zircons found in Finnish river sands. When scientists looked closely at their chemical makeup, they realized the age of crystals matched the rocks found in Greenland, not Scandinavia. They used special techniques to analyze elements like uranium, lead, lutetium, and hafnium, and discovered that Scandinavia's rocky base most likely broke off from Greenland billions of years ago. A small seed of land probably started drifting across the Earth's surface over hundreds of millions of years. This piece eventually settled where Finland is today. Over time, new layers of rock formed around this seed and slowly turned into the Scandinavia we see on maps now. The same study could help us rethink how the continents on Earth first formed. The most accepted theory is that the continental crust began growing right when the planet was formed. But new studies show that the signs of continents only started growing a billion years later. The scientists explain that Earth's continents may have begun as tiny seeds of ancient crust in different places. These seeds grew over time, forming the landmasses we know today. These ancient seeds aren't just found in Scandinavia, but also in Australia, South Africa, and India. Scientists aren't sure if all these seeds came from the same place or if they grew separately in different parts of the world. So there's still a lot to learn, and scientists need to keep digging to figure out if all these ancient seeds are related to each other.
Venus is often called Earth's evil twin. The thing is, this world once started off quite similar to our home planet. But later, something went wrong. These days, the two planets are relatively close and similar in size. But Venus's atmosphere is very different from that on our planet, all thanks to a runaway greenhouse effect that has been going on for a long time. The surface of Venus can get even hotter than the surface of Mercury, 864 degrees F. And the surface pressure feels as if you're more than half a mile underwater. The thick atmosphere presents its own challenges. Its clouds consist of sulfuric acid, which is used in lead-acid batteries, as well as industrial cleaners. And if you decided to land on the planet, you'd have to survive atmospheric entry, with friction heating you up to 20,000 degrees F. Still, people have always wanted to explore this inhospitable world. And we can't but talk about the Venera program. During the 1970s and 1980s, several spacecraft studied Venus from orbit and from its hostile surface for an hour or so at a time. The 10 successful Venera landers provided us with most of the data we have today about the surface of this mysterious planet, including surface composition, direct measurements of atmospheric conditions, and sets of unique images. At the same time, astronomers got their hands on these treasures only after a series of annoying failures. They started with Venera 1, launched in February 1961. Each consequent spacecraft was somehow improved and upgraded. But it still wasn't until the fifth group of Venus-bound space probes launched in 1967 that one of them, Venera 4, reached its target and sent data from Venus. Before that, Venera 2 and 3, launched in November 1965, were supposed to land on Venus, but both of them failed in transit. 11-foot-tall Venera 4 was a hefty thing. Its bottom lander was a bunch of instruments and a battery wrapped up in a pressure shell equipped with a parachute. This probe reached Venus in October 1967 and successfully launched the lander. The mother spaceship sent the probe flying over the planet, and it entered Venus's atmosphere. Temperatures were reaching 20,000 degrees F, and the entry force was as great as 450 G. It didn't prevent the onboard instruments from analyzing the atmosphere and sending back data. The first recorded temperature was 102 degrees F, and atmospheric pressure was similar to that on Earth. But the deeper the probe went, the higher the numbers became. 10 atmospheres, 20. They kept going up much higher than engineers had anticipated. 93 minutes into the mission, when the probe was still more than 16 miles above the surface of the planet, Venera 4 cracked open near its top and crashed. At the crash point, the measurements showed 22 atmospheres and 530 degrees F. Scientists realized that they needed a bigger spaceship. After some intense engineering, Venera 5 and Venera 6 saw the light of the day. Engineers did everything they could to make the landing probe stronger, but they were pressed for time. That's why Venera 5 and 6 were not fully prepared when they went on a mission. That's why Venera 5 transmitted data for a mere 53 minutes before succumbing to temperatures of 600 degrees F and pressures of 27 atmospheres. And Venera 6 lasted for 51 minutes. In any case now, the leaders of the project knew what it would take. 840 degrees F, 100 atmospheres, corrosive acids. They seemed to be prepared. They found new materials to build the probe. They got a hotter and stronger test chamber for the trials. They modified the parachute to make the lander fall faster so that the probe could spend as much time on the surface as possible. The lander was also designed in the shape of an egg and made of titanium, so its surface was smooth and had just a few ports, welds, and substructures. The insides were lined with a shock absorber and insulation layer. The chamber was also to pre-chill to freezing temperatures before entry. And Venera 7 was finally a success. It reached the planet in December 1970, separated from the mothership, and went down into the atmosphere. The probe transmitted data for 35 minutes, and things seemed smooth. But then, its chute melted, and the probe dropped like a rock, hitting the ground at 35 miles per hour and bouncing. Then, a second after the landing, the signal was abruptly cut. It looked like the probe crashed to bits. Shockingly, a few months later, while looking through all the data they managed to get, engineers rediscovered the signal. It was super weak and lost amidst the noise. Apparently, when Venera 7 bounced, it misaligned the antenna. The probe rested on its side, which weakened the signal to 1 or 3% of its initial strength. The probe kept transmitting data for 23 minutes. After that, the temperatures got too high and melted its shell. Venera 8, launched in 1972, had a similar design and experienced a similar fate. Venera 9 and 10 were a new generation of probes. They could send back black and white photos. It was actually the probe's main goal, to send the first ever photographic panorama from another planet. Venera 9 and 10 were 5 times heavier than their predecessors and weighed 5 tons at launch. The lander was 6.5 feet tall. It was basically a hermetically sealed titanium sphere that was supposed to hold the instruments. It was bolted with gold wire seals. Inside, there were shelves of beryllium and electric fans, whose main goal was to disperse heat to prevent instrument failure. On the bottom of the lander, there was a shock-absorbing ring. And at the top, there was a titanium ring that looked like a hat. It served as an aero brake. The parachute was supposed to detach at 30 miles above the surface, and the aero brake had to do the rest. In October 1975, Venera 9 and 10 arrived at Venus and landed as planned. Venera 9 was the first to land. It touched down on a slight slope, a volcanic crater or a hill, and kicked quite a bit of dust while landing. One of its 2 cameras succeeded in photographing and transmitting data, and soon scientists saw the first ever pictures of the surface of Venus. It was mostly sharp rocks, soil, and a distant horizon. The sun was slightly obscured by clouds that day. A gentle breeze was blowing. Overall, it was a pleasant morning. If you didn't pay attention to crushing pressure, almost completely waterless atmosphere, insanely high temperatures, and corrosive acids. Venera 10 landed in the same way a few days later, but the terrain it landed on was much more boring. Just a rolling plain with hardened pieces of magma. Both probes transmitted for 40 to 60 minutes until their orbiters went out of range. When it happened, the temperatures inside the probes were reaching 140 degrees F. The orbiters later burned up in the atmosphere after completing their mission. Venera 11 and 12 could have been a success, but a mysterious electric anomaly messed up with their cameras, so their trip was quickly forgotten. And Venera 13 and 14 entered the picture. They had improved scientific instruments and cameras that could take color images, and new heat-resistant technologies were used during the creation of these probes. Venera 13 arrived first and landed as planned. It took 2 photos, one black and white and the other in color. In the photos, one could see a surface of pebbled, loose soil and outcroppings of bedrock. It all looked pretty similar to the surface of the ocean. In the distance, there were rolling plateaus and an orange sky. The images taken later by Venera 14 showed a more weathered plain with less loose soil and fine-grained rocks. The 2 probes also sent back what they heard. It mostly sounded like a gently blowing wind with hints of distant rumbling. Could be Venus quakes. Venera 13 and 14 were the last landers to touch the surface of the planet. Venera 15 and 16 just flew around Venus, mapping its topography from orbit.
So Venus and Earth are so different that a foolish question like, what's longer, a day or a year, that makes absolutely no sense on Earth, totally makes sense on Venus. A day on Venus is indeed longer than a year. If we put it into Earth's perspective, a day on Venus would equal 243 Earth days, while a year would only last 225 days. So it's like your birthday is every day. Venus is often nicknamed Earth's evil twin. Their differences are so stark, you'd think they're from different galaxies altogether. Just to give you an idea of how far apart they are, if the day-to-year ratio wasn't enough, the Earth rises in the west on Venus but sets in the east. These days, one of the very few similarities between these two is their size. But try to imagine a time when Venus and Earth were like peas in a pod, besties since the beginning of the solar system. Venus used to be the life of the party. NASA scientists think Venus might have even hosted a liquid water ocean and surface temperatures that could have welcomed life for up to 2 billion years. But modern-day Venus is a different story. We're talking extreme temperatures and a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere. So, what led to this cosmic makeover? Size, location, and attitude. I mean that the distance from the Sun and internal heat played a huge role in shaping Venus and Earth's destinies. By the way, there used to be 3 siblings that could have hosted life: Venus, Earth, and Mars. Now imagine 3 cupcakes in an oven. Once they were fully baked, they were taken out of the oven. One of them was put in front of an open window in the middle of winter. Another was carefully placed on a table and covered with a nice clean kitchen towel. And the last one was accidentally forgotten and left in the oven. Oops. Mars, Earth, and Venus are like those cupcakes. Mars got too cold and not welcoming. Earth is still nice and warm and well protected from all the unpleasant things, just like the towel protects that lucky cupcake. And Venus got scorching hot and impossible to consume. In terms of development, Earth took the slow and steady route, maintaining its oceans, stable atmosphere, and biodiversity. Venus, on the other hand, cranked up the temperature, evaporated its oceans, and went all in with greenhouse gases. As a result, we have a planet where you'll melt faster than a snowman in July. Mars, on the contrary, will turn you into an ice popsicle within seconds. But chances are, it might have been pretty hospitable at some point. Some scientists believe that Mars used to be covered with flowing rivers and lakes and had no water shortages. Even today, Mars still has an ocean called Oceanus Borealis, or rather, the remains of what once used to be an ocean. It lost nearly all its water over time. Now, the sources of water on Mars include polar ice caps and minerals and rocks. According to estimates, only 1% of all that water evaporated, while 99% is still locked in the red planet. Ice polar caps are pretty simple to understand, as we have the same thing on Earth. But rocks containing water? Simple. There are at least 4 types of hydrous minerals on Mars. There are hydrous clays made of silicon oxygen, and the cool thing about them is that they can even contain magnesium and iron, which are sulfur-based hydrous sulfates. Now, don't you? I know you thought of the smell of rotten eggs. But it's typical of hydrogen sulfur and not just sulfur. These minerals have water incorporated right into their chemical formulas. There's also hydrous silica, which has water locked in its formula too. Scientists have experimented with growing plants using Martian-like conditions and found success with alfalfa. Harvesting alfalfa also helped improve the growth of other crops like turnips and lettuce. While water may be available on the red planet, the air on Mars is mostly carbon dioxide. On the bright side, and the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, the Mars Oxy, can produce oxygen on Mars, which could be crucial for future missions. As for energy sources on Mars, solar, wind, and geothermal energy are a few promising options. Solar power is less effective on Mars due to weaker sunlight and dust storms. But wind power and geothermal energy could serve as reliable alternatives. With these sources in place, humans could potentially sustain life on Mars. But let's get back to comparing our sibling planets. While both Mars and Earth have moons, and Mars even has 2 of them, Venus has 0, just like Mercury. Due to its proximity to the Sun and the star's gravitational pull, Mercury lacks the ability to retain its own moon. The likelihood of any moon orbiting Mercury either colliding with the planet or being drawn into the orbit of the Sun is high. That's all clear and understandable. But the absence of moons around Venus remains an unsolved puzzle for scientists. Despite Venus's scorching hot temperatures, scientists think that even today it might not be as hostile to life as we once thought. A recent MIT study found 19 amino acids surviving in a Venus-like solution for the whole month. Yep, some like it hot. Also, Rocket Lab and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology are teaming up to send an uncrewed spacecraft, Venus Life Finder, on a mission to Venus. This spacecraft will search for signs of life in the Venusian atmosphere using a special instrument called an autofluorescing nephelometer. And no, I didn't make that up. Originally set to launch in 2023, the mission is now pushed back to December 2024 with arrival at Venus in May 2025. The goal of the mission is to discover organic compounds in Venus's atmosphere, which could point to the possibility of habitable conditions in the cloud layer. The spacecraft is designed with a Photon Explorer cruise stage and a compact atmospheric probe equipped with that nephelometer thingy. The small probe will descend through the Venusian atmosphere, collecting data on cloud particles and organic compounds. In 2020, scientists made a big announcement about finding phosphine on Venus, a compound that could be linked to life. While they're still working on confirming this, using information from telescopes or even past missions, there might be evidence hidden in old NASA data received from Venus that could shed more light on the discovery. The potential presence of phosphine on Venus has stirred excitement and caution among scientists. To make sure, they need more data from telescopes or new space missions. If they find this gas, it might mean there is some form of life producing it in the planet's clouds. This discovery would be a huge step toward understanding Venus better. Some experts think that sending probes to Venus to directly detect phosphine would be the most effective way to confirm its presence. An 80s NASA mission may have already detected phosphine, but scientists back then didn't realize it. Now, this data is being reevaluated to uncover any overlooked evidence of the presence of the gas. This could also suggest that the compound has been in Venus's atmosphere for decades, raising questions about its source. But not everyone is convinced of this interpretation, which evokes a debate among scientists about the true nature of the detected gases. Old data from other missions may also hold clues about phosphate on Venus. While new spacecraft are going to explore the planet, it's possible that the key to unlocking this mystery lies in decades-old mission records. In total, there have been 46 space missions to Venus, including some flybys where gravity lent a helping hand. The last time we successfully landed a spacecraft on Venus was way back in June 1985 as part of the Vega 2 mission. So, let's see what Venus Life Finder will discover.
Venus is often called Earth's sister planet. For one thing, these two are almost the same size. Plus, Venus and Earth are very similar in mass and composition. Venus orbits the Sun within its Goldilocks, aka habitable, zone 2, just like Earth. But the differences between our home planet and Venus are more substantial than any similarities. For example, the atmosphere of Venus is 90 times as thick as what we have here on Earth. The surface temperature is so high you could melt lead there. And the air is toxic. It consists of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. In other words, if humans decided to move to Venus, some serious terraforming, which is basically ecological engineering, would be needed first. And still, some scientists believe that Venus is an even better candidate for terraforming than Mars. And there are several suggestions on how to do it. One of the ideas involves the use of genetically engineered algae to fix carbon into organic compounds. Unfortunately, the more researchers study this method, the less plausible it becomes. The main problem is that the production of organic molecules from carbon dioxide needs hydrogen. But this element is extremely rare on Venus. This planet doesn't have a protective magnetosphere, and its upper atmosphere is exposed to direct erosion by the solar wind. That's why it has lost most of its original hydrogen to space. Also, any carbon that was bound up in organic molecules would be converted back into carbon dioxide in no time due to the ultra-hot surface environment. And Venus wouldn't even begin to cool down until after the removal of the largest part of carbon dioxide. The next idea was to bombard Venus's atmosphere with hydrogen. As a result, water and graphite would be produced. This water would fall down to the planet and cover almost 80% of its surface, forming vast oceans. To do it, we would need loads of hydrogen, so it would have to be harvested directly from one of our solar system's ice giants or their moons. This suggestion also involves iron aerosol getting added to the atmosphere of Venus. It could be derived from a number of sources, like the moon, asteroids, or Mercury. The resulting atmosphere would be around 3 bars, which is basically 3 times more surface pressure than on Earth. It would also mainly consist of nitrogen. With time, some of it would dissolve into new oceans, reducing atmospheric pressure even more. There's also an idea of solar shades. A series of small spacecraft or a single large lens might be used to divert sunlight from the planet's surface. This could probably reduce the insane temperatures on the planet. Venus absorbs twice as much sunlight as our planet. It's believed to have played a big role in the runaway greenhouse effect, which has made the planet what it is today. Such a shade could be based in space. This way, it would also serve to block the solar wind, thus reducing the amount of radiation the surface of Venus is exposed to. This radiation is a huge issue when it comes to the habitability of the planet. If this method indeed managed to cool Venus down, it would lead to atmospheric CO2, becoming liquid or frozen and getting deposited on the surface as dry ice. Solar reflectors could also be positioned in the atmosphere or on the surface of the planet. In this case, they could be large reflective balloons, sheets of carbon nanotubes or graphene, or something totally different. One of the coolest suggestions is to build cities above Venus's clouds. This way they could act as both solar shields and as processing stations. The first colonists would live there, acting as terraformers, gradually converting the atmosphere of the planet into something livable. Later, they would migrate to the surface.
In our solar system, most planets spin counterclockwise, but not Venus. This rebel planet decided to spin clockwise, and scientists are still trying to figure out why. By the way, why do planets rotate in general? What defines the speed of their rotation? Does the sun rotate? Buckle up and let's try to answer these questions. Venus is the second planet from the sun and the hottest planet in our solar system. Did you know that Venus is sometimes called Earth's twin? That's because it's similar in size and composition to our own planet. But that's where the similarities end, because Venus is a pretty crazy place, to say the least. For example, the weather. On Venus, it's always hot and cloudy. And when I say hot, I mean it like it's over 800 degrees Fahrenheit there. And those clouds, they're not made of water like the ones on Earth. Instead, they're made of sulfuric acid. So yeah, you wouldn't want to go outside without a really good sunscreen on Venus. If you look at the photos taken from its surface, you can see these toxic yellow clouds and cracked, desolate landscapes. And the spacecraft that captured this turned off almost immediately after sending these photos. Poor fella. But the surface of Venus isn't just some solid, dark, flat land. In fact, Venus has mountains that are taller than Mount Everest. These mountains aren't made of rock like the ones on Earth, though. Instead, they're made of a kind of volcanic material that's denser. Venus is a pretty creepy place that holds many mysteries. One of them has been puzzling scientists for years, and this is the planet's rotation. Most planets in our solar system rotate counterclockwise, but Venus isn't like the other girls. It rotates clockwise, and that's not all. It also rotates around the sun faster than it rotates around itself. In other words, a year on this planet passes faster than a day. It's almost like Venus made being quirky its life mission. But why is that? Well, scientists have a few theories. The most popular theory says that Venus was actually spinning counterclockwise like the other planets, but then something happened to flip it around. And what could that something be, you ask? A planet-sized object. Yep, astronomers believe that something huge once collided with Venus, causing it to spin in the opposite direction. You can imagine this like a cosmic billiard shot, with this mysterious huge object being the cue ball and Venus being the target ball. But we can't actually say that Venus is spinning the wrong way. There's no such thing as a wrong direction of spin in the universe. This is actually called the retrograde rotation. This is when a planet rotates in the opposite direction to its orbit around the Sun. Venus, for example, has a retrograde rotation, which means that the Sun rises in the west and sets in the east on that planet. So now when the horoscope says something like Mercury in retrograde, you'll know what it means. Oh, but Venus isn't the only weird one in our solar system. There are definitely some wacky ways that planets can rotate. For example, most planets in our solar system spin around an imaginary line called an axis. This axis is usually straight up and down in relation to the planet's orbit around the Sun. However, some planets like Uranus have a tilted axis, which means it's almost on its side in relation to its orbit. This tilt causes the planet's poles to be nearly in the same place as its orbit. The result? As the planet orbits the Sun, different parts of it receive different amounts of sunlight, causing extreme seasonal variations. For example, one pole might experience continuous sunlight, while the other is in complete darkness for a long time. Uranus is the only planet in our solar system that rotates on its side. Scientists think that it could repeat Venus's history. Once upon a time, a large impact knocked Uranus off its original axis of rotation, causing it to tilt at an angle of 98 degrees. We should be grateful for Jupiter. Its crazy gravity pulls all the asteroids and protects us from such collisions. All this is somewhat similar to tidally locked planets. Imagine going on a date with a planet, but instead of being charming and mysterious like you'd hoped, it's just staring at you with the same face all night long. That's basically what it's like to hang out with a tidally locked planet. Tidally locked planets are planets that rotate around their axis at the same rate that they orbit their star. This means that the same side of the planet always faces the star, while the other side is in permanent darkness. Being tidally locked can have some weird effects on the planet's climate and weather. The side facing the star can become extremely hot, while the other side can be incredibly cold. The atmosphere on the planet can also get pretty wild, with strong winds blowing from the hot side to the cold side. And it doesn't have to be planets only. Our moon also works this way. Did you know that we always see only one side of the moon? That's because it's tidally locked to the Earth. We can also take the dwarf planet Pluto as an example. It has a strange rotational relationship with its largest moon, Charon. They're tidally locked, which means that they always face each other with the same side. As a result, Pluto and Charon appear to waltz around a common center of gravity, creating a unique dance in space. But the oddities of our solar system don't end there. There are also planets with super fast rotations. While most planets rotate at a fairly sedate pace, some of them are sonic levels fast. Jupiter, for example, rotates once every 9 hours and 56 minutes, which means that it has a day that's less than 10 hours long. That's fast enough to cause the planet to bulge out at its equator. And also, this rapid rotation creates strong bands of winds that can reach speeds of up to 400 miles per hour. And if all this still seems logical and kinda makes sense, then how about chaotic rotations? Yep. Some planets have a rotation that's so irregular and unpredictable that it's known as chaotic rotation. This is often caused by the gravitational influence of nearby moons or other planets. And it's mostly the case with moons and small objects like that. In our solar system, some moons of Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune have chaotic rotation. By the way, the Sun rotates too, just like the planets. However, its rotation is not uniform. The equator rotates faster than the poles. Pretty weird, isn't it? This phenomenon creates a magnetic field that's responsible for phenomena like sunspots and solar flares. But all this raises an interesting topic. Why do planets rotate in the first place? This may sound like a silly question, but can you answer it? The answer might be trickier than you imagine. It all started around 4.5 billion years ago with the formation of our solar system. When it formed, it started as a large cloud of gas and dust. As the cloud began to contract due to its own gravity, it began to spin faster and faster, like a spinning top. This spinning motion caused the cloud to flatten into a disc-like shape. As the cloud continued to contract, the center became denser and hotter, eventually forming the sun. Meanwhile, the material in the disk began to clump together and form planets. But because the disk was already spinning, this spinning motion was inherited by the planets as they formed. In other words, the planets rotate by inertia. They inherited the spinning motion of the cloud of gas and dust from which they formed. This is known as the conservation of angular momentum. This is the same principle that causes ice skaters to spin faster when they bring their arms in. And that's a wrap on the wacky world of planet rotations. From the lightning-fast spin of Jupiter to the bizarre backwards rotation of Venus, it's clear that our solar system is full of surprises. But thanks to the laws of physics and the gravitational pull of the sun, these planets continue to spin on, keeping time with the steady beat of the cosmos. Stay tuned.
Venus has more volcanoes than any other planet in the solar system, more than 1,600. And a day on Venus, measured by how long it takes to rotate once on its axis, takes longer than the time it takes to complete a full orbit of the Sun. Wow! And that's just Monday. An extreme greenhouse effect warms the planet's surface up to 870 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. Winds there reach the speed of 450 miles per hour in the middle cloud layer, faster than the speediest tornadoes on our planet. The pressure on Venus's surface is 90 times higher than that at sea level on Earth. What a great place for a vacation, huh? And recently, this incredible place has become even more intriguing. In the toxic Venusian atmosphere, there's something that might mean the existence of life. Unfortunately, scientists haven't had a chance to collect any microbe specimens or snap any pictures of life there. But they've discovered a chemical called phosphine, and it's a big deal.
If it's not some previously unknown chemistry that produces the gas, then there must be a kind of microbial life involved in the process. Phosphine is made up of 3 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of phosphorus. This gas is toxic to any normal life form that needs oxygen, including us humans. On our planet, phosphine can be found in places with no or little oxygen, for example, marshes and swamps. The gas is created by complex mixtures of bacteria living there. They can also be produced industrially.
The weirdest thing is that phosphine isn't supposed to be in Venus's atmosphere at all. This gas needs precise pressure and temperature and tons of hydrogen to form. It wouldn't be all that surprising to find it on Saturn or Jupiter, the famous gas giants, but on Venus, totally unexpected. There's no way phosphine can be produced naturally on this planet. Tiny amounts of it can be created during volcanic eruptions, lightning storms, minerals blown up to the surface, or meteorites entering Venus's atmosphere. But it's not nearly enough to explain what the astronomers have observed. It would only make 1/10,000th of the phosphine the telescope saw.
But let's start from the very beginning. In 2017, a group of scientists led by Jane Greaves from Cardiff University started to use the James Clerk Maxwell Radio Telescope in Hawaii. That's a mouthful. The main idea was to search for phosphine gas. It would be a sign of life on Venus. When the data came back and the researchers analyzed it, they were shocked. The phosphine signal was powerful. The team checked the results several times. They wanted to make sure no other substance mimicked the presence of phosphine gas.
So now, does it mean there's life on Venus? Well, not necessarily. If this gas is created by some mysterious organisms, it's a big question how they survive on Venus. On our planet, some microbes can thrive in the environments with the acidity of 5%, but no more. On Venus, though, clouds are almost entirely made of acid. And even though they have a rather pleasant temperature of 86 degrees Fahrenheit, these clouds contain more than 90% of sulfuric acid. DNA, amino acids, proteins, life components on Earth would be dissolved there in the blink of an eye. The surface of the planet is too hot for any kind of complex molecules to make up life. The Venusian atmosphere is almost 50 times as dry as the driest place on our home planet. There's a theory that microbes might hide in scarce water droplets floating in the atmosphere, but it hasn't been proved yet.
Right now, the research team's waiting for more telescope time. They're going to look for other gases associated with life. But even if they find more evidence, life forms on Venus will be made up of building blocks absolutely different than those on Earth. Or they might be protected by a sulfuric acid-resistant shell. It can be made of such substances as sulfur, wax, graphite, or something else we can't imagine.
Of course, some experts question the idea of life on Venus. They think the gas might be produced during some geologic or atmospheric processes happening on the planet. But the supporters of both theories agree on one thing: the discovery is extraordinary. Interestingly, astronomers have always tried to find signs of life on giant planets' icy moons, or even closer, on Mars. But they've never seriously considered Venus. If additional telescope observations and future space missions confirm that phosphine is produced by living organisms, we can be in for a bunch of exciting surprises. Then people would know of a planet with an alien biosphere, well, alien to us, and this planet would be just next door to Earth. Now, speaking of visiting Venus, though, would it be possible for people to land on this planet? After all, robots are already tooling around the red planet surface. On the pro side, Venus is closer to Earth than Mars, but it also has much harsher conditions. The planet is hotter than Mercury, even though Venus is almost double the distance from the Sun. The temperatures are higher than the melting point of many metals, and some of them, like lead or bismuth, can fall as snow on the highest mountain peaks. If you set foot on the planet, you'll find nothing but barren rock. Giant basaltic plains are littered with volcanoes and mountains. In some places, the surface melts because of the heat underneath. After it releases some of it, the rock solidifies again.
If people ever go to this planet, they will most likely build floating cities in the clouds of Venus's atmosphere. At about 31 miles above the surface, the conditions, like the pressure and gravity, are similar to those on Earth. The temperature is rather manageable too, at around 167 degrees Fahrenheit. Think Death Valley, California on a really hot day. The atmospheric pressure is half of what we have at sea level on our planet. If you went outside, you'd be fine without a pressure suit. The pressure you'd feel would be the same as at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Plus, this colony would be protected from the sun's radiation better than one on Mars.
If the atmosphere was the mission's final destination, landing a spacecraft, or rather making it hover in the air, would look very different. The idea is to use an airship in the upper atmosphere for long periods of time. The airship, wrapped in an aeroshell, would enter the planet's atmosphere at a speed of 24,000 feet per second. In the next 7 minutes, its speed would drop to around 1,500 feet per second. After that, a huge parachute would open. It would slow the spacecraft down even more, and then things would get a bit hectic. The aeroshell, not needed anymore, would drop away. The airship would then inflate itself, all the while hurtling through the atmosphere toward the planet's surface. Its speed would be at least 330 feet per second. It would get larger and larger, and its drag and lift would increase. Soon, the parachute wouldn't be needed anymore. The crew would get rid of it, and the airship would fill with air completely. If everything went as planned, it would stop 30 miles above Venus's surface. After that, the airship would travel around the planet. It would be moved by the wind, which can reach a speed of 220 miles per hour at the top of the cloud layer. If you decided to move closer to the surface, though, you'd have to be extremely careful. The wind in the middle layer can get twice faster. The airship could be filled with a breathable mixture of hydrogen and oxygen gases. Such a combination would be less dense than the Venusian atmosphere. It would provide the needed buoyancy, to stay up there. Venus is famous for its super dense clouds. These clouds make the planet shine bright enough to be seen from Earth. Venus reflects more than 75% of the light that comes from the Sun. This reflective cloud layer exists thanks to a haze of sulfuric acid droplets in the atmosphere, and they gather exactly at the height where the airship would float. Luckily, people already have a method to overcome the problem of acidity. A few materials, for example Teflon and some types of plastic, have an amazing acidic resistance. They could protect the outsides of the ship. So, let's say you needed to work on a platform outside. Then you'd be able to do it, wearing only a chemical hazard suit and carrying necessary oxygen supply. Ooh, sounds like fun, huh? Yeah, me neither. In 2020, scientists studied Venus's surface. This planet has a similar atmosphere to Earth. That's why it's so interesting to people. During studies, they discovered there's phosphine in the surrounding gases of this planet. This substance has organic compounds, phosphorus, with carbon or hydrogen combination. This was an important discovery because the colorless, poisonous phosphine may have a biological origin. On Venus, the recent volcanic activity can be a reason for the appearance of this gas. But it's also possible that some bacteria really live there. Now let's move from Venus to Earth, to the Falkland Islands. Beautiful Gentoo penguins live here. Scientists took samples of the penguins' excretion for studying. In the lab, they analyzed the Gentoo's doo-doo and found phosphine there. This discovery shocked everyone. How did the substance that exists 38 million miles away from us got inside penguins? It's hard to believe, but what if these unusual birds came to us from Venus? Maybe they often raise their heads up to see their faraway home in the starry sky. Penguins are rare birds that can turn saltwater into freshwater inside their body. There are unique glands next to their eyes that work as powerful kidneys. It allows penguins to remove salt from the bloodstream. So maybe this same gland can help them survive on Venus in some way. Penguins can't fly only on our planet. But just imagine Venus's atmosphere is perfect for flights. It's possible that millions of penguins are flying on Venus right now. We just can't see them because of the gases covering this planet. Of course, it's unlikely that this theory will find confirmation. Penguins would hardly be able to survive in Venus's atmosphere, which is 96% composed of carbon dioxide. There's also a small amount of sulfuric acid clouds on this planet. But scientists still don't know how the bodies of these birds can produce phosphine. They plan to conduct a thorough study and observe the behavior of Gentoo penguins. They need to know what the birds eat, what kind of lifestyle they lead, and much more. After the study, scientists hope the penguin phosphine will help identify many different organisms living on other planets. It's possible that inside the penguins, certain anaerobic bacteria produce phosphine to fight other competing microbes. Traces of phosphine can also be found in pond slime on our planet. In the future, scientists are going to send several probes to Venus to explore the planet's atmosphere and find the source of phosphine. There's another animal that may be from another planet. No, not me. This time, it lives in seas and oceans. In 2018, a scientific article was published where a group of researchers stated octopuses were not born on Earth. And this is not a metaphor. They literally called them creatures from outer space. And in fact, there are several reasons to think so. One of the hypotheses says that viruses from other worlds fell into the Earth's ocean and infected squid with shellfish, and forced them to evolve into octopuses. Another theory says the octopus's eggs were brought to our planet on a meteorite. All these versions appeared because of how unique the octopus is. These sea creatures are closely related to snails, mollusks, and squids. But octopuses are much smarter. They are the smartest invertebrates on the planet. Their intellectual abilities are also superior to many mammals, including some guys I went to school with. They have one of the most complex nervous systems of all living organisms. Octopuses have a central brain in their body, and their tentacles are endowed with a neural connection that allows them to think separately from the central mind. Their vision is developed in such a way that their eyes can be compared to the lens of an expensive video camera. They can change color and shape, disguise themselves with a combination of color pigment, nerves, and muscles. But the coolest thing is their intelligence. They can relax and do nothing, be lazy, and have fun. No other creature on the planet has such an unusual appearance and behavior. But the main reason to consider them as aliens from outer space is their history of evolution. In any existing animal, you can track its evolutionary stages of development. For example, elephants and mammoths descended from a common ancestor from the elephant family that went extinct 5 to 6 million years ago. If you look even further, you see almost all mammals descended from animal-like reptiles. Almost every animal has a branch of evolution that has made it what it is. Each species changes over millions of years. But octopuses don't have this branch. They suddenly appeared on the family tree. From the point of view of evolution, squid should evolve into octopuses in millions of years. But scientists can't track the evolution of octopuses with all their intelligence, their tentacles, and their ability to disguise themselves. The octopus genome is unlike any other genome on the planet. If the outer space origin of octopuses turns out to be real, it could confirm the theory opposite to Darwin's evolution. According to this theory, living organisms or their embryos were brought to Earth from outside on meteorites. But for now, there's no evidence to support this theory. Some scientists believe that octopuses separated from the squid line about 135 million years ago. But this theory hasn't been proven either. But if octopuses came to us from outer space, how is it possible that living organisms survived an interstellar voyage? In fact, this is not impossible. There are creatures on Earth that can survive in space, and these are tardigrades or water bears. These are microscopic 8-legged invertebrates close to arthropods. You need a microscope to see them, but even a cheap one will let you see them in detail. From the outside, they look somewhat like bears. They are called water bears because they require a thin layer of water around the body to prevent dehydration. These creatures have been found in all kinds of environments, from the depths of the ocean to hot sand dunes. They are incredibly tenacious thanks to their unique structure. They look soft, but their body is covered with a hard cuticle. This covering resembles the exoskeleton of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed the old cuticle layer to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The tardigrades manage to survive at a temperature of minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit. This is almost 3 times colder than in icy Antarctica. Hot conditions aren't a problem for them either. They have survived a temperature of 300 degrees Fahrenheit. This means they exist in boiling water. Water bears aren't afraid of radiation or high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of strong metals. The water bear can withstand pressure 6 times heavier. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field, that is, a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't care about this radiation. They can go into low Earth orbit and return unharmed. Their body strength is provided by a protein that protects their DNA from ionizing radiation. Tardigrades can also fall into a state of cryptobiosis. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, lack of oxygen, or an overabundance of salt, the tardigrade pulls its head and legs inside the body and falls asleep. It can stay in the form of an unmoving barrel until the conditions around it improve. This state of cryptobiosis allows them to live without water and food for decades. In 2016, scientists managed to revive 2 tardigrades that had been sleeping for more than 30 years. These creatures have survived 5 global catastrophes on Earth. They appeared about 5 billion years ago, and it's possible they'll live just as long. They aren't afraid of any apocalypses. Asteroids hit our planet, a supernova explodes nearby, and its radiation splashes out on Earth. A global heat or ice storm starts. People and most living creatures may not survive these events, but the water bears can.
What if I told you that humans could have evolved on a planet other than Earth? And we're not talking about Mars here. This planet is Venus, one of the most toxic and dangerous places in our solar system. But imagine this. Once upon a time, Venus was a happening place for potential life. And maybe, just maybe, life was there. How is that possible? And what happened? Let's figure it out. Picture this, a planet swathed in clouds and named after a deity of love and beauty, Aphrodite. Sounds enchanting, right? But don't be fooled. Venus, our neighbor, is the second planet from the Sun, and it's no picnic. Its surface is hot enough to melt lead, and the atmosphere is so thick that the Sun is just a blurry smudge. As you get closer to it, things turn from dreamy to downright hellish. About 30 miles up in the atmosphere, temperatures range from 86 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is just the beginning. To survive on Venus, you'd need super-duper insulation, because temperatures can reach a sizzling 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, the weight of the atmosphere would bear down on you like being submerged deep in the ocean. The atmosphere is mostly made of carbon dioxide, and down at the surface, it behaves in a corrosive way due to the intense heat and pressure. The sky is sulfur yellow, and the clouds are composed of sulfuric acid. The surface is filled with active volcanoes and craters. Yikes! It's like the environment itself turns against you. Venus is often referred to as the Earth's twin. That's because Venus is almost as big as Earth, just a tad smaller, and these two planets look quite similar on the inside. But in reality, Venus is more like Earth's opposite than its twin. It spins in the opposite direction, has longer days than years, and has no seasons to speak of, not even mentioning its crazy weather conditions. But believe it or not, it wasn't always this way. A long time ago, around 3 billion years after it was born, Venus might have been a watery wonderland like our beloved Earth. It had a cozy climate, and researchers think there was even enough time for life to emerge. But how do we know that? Back in 1978, NASA's Pioneer Venus spacecraft discovered hints that Venus might have had oceans on its surface. Since then, scientists have sent more missions to explore the planet, and they've learned some fascinating things about its past. NASA researchers have come up with 5 cool simulations to show what Venus was like with different amounts of water covering its surface. To create these simulations, scientists used a fancy 3D model that takes into account the gases in Venus's atmosphere billions of years ago and how they are now. They also considered how the sun's radiation has changed over time, getting warmer as it ages. And it turns out that Venus used to be a lot like Earth. All simulations suggest that Venus could have had stable temperatures, ranging from a comfy 68 degrees Fahrenheit to a toasty 122 degrees Fahrenheit. In some of the simulations, Venus had a similar landscape to what it has now, with a shallow ocean and some water trapped in the soil. In others, they imagined Venus having a deep ocean or even the entire surface covered in water. Surprisingly, in all these scenarios, Venus could have maintained temperatures suitable for liquid water. Now, imagine a parallel universe where Venus stayed this way. What if things turned out differently and it was still as cozy as Earth? It could have been the perfect place for humans. Its oceans would have provided a nurturing environment for life to flourish and evolve. The temperatures would have been like a perpetual springtime picnic. Can you imagine lounging under a Venusian palm tree, sipping Venusian lemonade? Ah, the good life. Also, Venus had a slow rotation compared to Earth. Days would have stretched out, giving us more time to enjoy life's simple pleasures. Instead of 24 hours, a Venusian day might have lasted for months. You could have taken an extended vacation and still had time for a full makeover. And what about the higher atmospheric pressure? It may sound intimidating, but it could have actually worked in our favor. The higher pressure would have provided a cozy and snug environment, like being wrapped in a warm, fluffy blanket. No need to worry about the chilly winds of other planets. Venus would have had us covered. Oh, and remember the acidic atmosphere? It may sound strange, but it would have had its benefits too. Venus would have been a carbon dioxide-loving paradise. Plant life would have thrived, creating lush landscapes and filling the air with fresh oxygen. So in this scenario, Venus could have been our haven among the stars. So what happened? What has ruined Venus? Unfortunately, everything changed about 700 million years ago. There was a huge event that caused Venus to change completely, turning it into the hostile place it is today. It experienced a runaway greenhouse effect, which made its atmosphere super thick and scorching hot. A runaway greenhouse effect sucked all the water into space, leaving behind a scorching surface of volcanic rock with thick, crushing atmosphere and acid clouds. Yikes. So what caused this catastrophic transformation? Well, our experts believe it may have been due to volcanic activity. When magma and molten rock reached the surface, they released a bunch of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. If the magma cooled before reaching the surface, it created a barrier that prevented the gas from being reabsorbed. massive amounts of gas were released into the atmosphere. Something similar happened on Earth with the Siberian traps, which caused a mass extinction. Venus had its own mega transformation. So, unfortunately, this catastrophe changed the history of our solar system once and forever. But here's the fascinating part. This little mysterious planet still could teach us a lot about the origins of life. For example, if Venus was once habitable, it opens up exciting possibilities for exoplanets in the Venus zone of other star systems. Maybe they could support life too. There's also a critical question that scientists ponder. How do these life-friendly worlds come into existence? Early on, Venus and Earth were strikingly similar. They were close in size, had similar structures inside, and even had oceans in their youthful days. But one planet turned into a scorching inferno, while the other became a thriving hub for abundant life. Why is that? And finally, believe it or not, we can't completely rule out the possibility of life on Venus even now. Up high in the thick yellow clouds where the temperature, air pressure, and chemistry are friendlier, there might be a chance. That's a range where earthly life, like tough extremophile microbes, could potentially survive. The atmospheric pressure up there is similar to what we experience on Earth's surface. We've even noticed strange dark patches in its atmosphere that come and go. Dark streaks persist, defying hurricane-force winds and absorbing ultraviolet radiation. Scientists are scratching their heads over these persistent streaks. They suspect they could be made of fine particles or ice crystals. But here's where it gets wild. Astrobiologists consider another option. Could these streaks be made up of Venus-style microbial life? They theorize that ring-shaped sulfur compounds in Venus's atmosphere could act as a protective coating for the microbes. Wouldn't that be amazing? That's why, by studying why Venus went down a different path in terms of habitability, we can unlock the secrets of what makes other worlds just right for life. However, there are still mysteries to solve. We need more missions to study Venus and understand its history better. For example, learn how quickly it cooled down after its formation. We also want to figure out if the transformation was a one-time cataclysm or a series of events over billions of years. Nonetheless, we can still dream of the Venus that could have been. A paradise where humans and Venusians could have lived side by side. So keep your eyes on Venus. It's a wild planet with a captivating history. Who knows what other surprises it has in store for us? Let's keep exploring and reaching for the stars.
These days, you're better off boarding a plane if you want to travel from New York to London. But what if I told you there was a time when these two cities were actually on the same continent? Well, the explanation is a bit more complex. For starters, back then, these two cities didn't even exist at all. But the tectonic plates they sit on today were a lot closer. Nearly 200 million years ago, all of the continents on our planet connected, making up one large supercontinent. This enormous piece of land was surrounded by one single ocean. We call this huge continent Pangaea these days. Some parts of this continent broke apart and shifted away from each other for our maps to reach their current configuration. There's even a nice experiment you can conduct to test this theory. Find a map online and print it on a piece of paper. After that, simply cut out all of the continents. Once you start playing around with them, you'll soon notice they all seem to fit together, like pieces from a puzzle. Probably the most striking thing you'll see is how South America perfectly fits Africa. What's even more fascinating is that this isn't the first time in our planet's history that supercontinents have been formed and then broken apart. Scientists have figured out that this happened at least 3 times before. And if we consider our planet's age, 4.5 billion years, the last 200 million is closer to the blink of an eye. So how did scientists figure out that continents move? Apart from the aspect of today's continents, they also looked at identical rocks, which have been found on different continents. They looked like they formed from the same minerals and under the same weather conditions. Some other secret helpers? Well, dinosaurs. Fossils from the same species have been stumbled upon in both South America and Africa. This particular dinosaur, named Mesosaurus, is said to have lived on our planet way before the continents drifted apart. It's hard to imagine how life on Earth must have been with one single continent. For starters, the climate must have been very different. That's because the mid-portion of the land would have probably been bone dry, having little to no source of water. More so, it was most likely hidden away behind many mountain chains. These would have acted as a barrier against moisture and rainfall too. However, geologists have also studied coal deposits from the United States and Europe. These seem to show that at least a part of the ancient supercontinent, which was close to the equator, must have been an amazing tropical rainforest, just like those we can find in the Amazonian jungle today. Coal appears when remnants of plants and animals get stuck into swampy water. If enough pressure is applied by the water, the substance is first turned into peat, then into coal. Our planet existed in this continental configuration for over 100 million years, and during this time, there was a lot of life on Earth already thriving. Hey, it was a great time to be an insect. Critters like beetles and dragonflies flourished. During the same time period, the Earth was roamed by the predecessor of all mammals, the synapsid. Life in Pangaea was severely hit during one not-so-great period. It's believed that a comet or asteroid landed on the surface of the Earth about 251 million years ago. The asteroid or comet theory seems to fit pretty well, because 90% of all marine animals and 70% of the creatures living on land disappeared all of a sudden. The comet might not have been the only reason for the mass extinction. At the same time, there was also some important volcanic activity happening in northern Asia, which might have disrupted life on Earth. We may not notice it, but continents do continue moving as we speak. This configuration we now see with the help of satellite imagery will surely not be the last. Australia, for example, is slowly moving towards Asia. But the most important proof that our continents are still shifting is the eastern portion of Africa. This area is simply breaking off from the rest of the land. To witness this, you'll have to travel to one of the hottest places on our planet. But if you get to this piece of land on the eastern part of the African continent, you might sit on top of the exact spot that, soon enough, will be split in two by water. Underneath this region, 3 tectonic plates are slowly drifting apart. If the data is correct, in the far future, Africa will be split in 2, and between its 2 regions, a new ocean will arise. To support this theory, scientists have been closely studying a 35-mile-long crack in the Ethiopian desert for years. For this new ocean to form, it's estimated that 5 to 10 million years need to pass. Since our planet's crust is made out of multiple tectonic plates that are constantly moving, it's the perfect place to study this process. These plates are all irregularly shaped, and they are always mashing against, sliding under, or over each other. Those 3 tectonic plates found under the desert are also moving at different speeds. One of them, called the Arabian Plate, is sliding away from Africa at a speed of about 1 inch per year. The other 2 plates are moving a bit slower, somewhere between ½ an inch to 0.2 inches each year. More so, as these movements happen, material from deep inside Earth climbs to the surface and forms an oceanic crust at the edges. All this movement does make you wonder, how will the next supercontinent form, and when? So far, scientists came up with some possible configurations, each with its own name: Novo Pangaea, Pangaea Ultima, or Amasia. All these predictions still vary, as we're not sure how and why continents really move over time. One clue may be actually looking at how Pangaea separated in the first place. Regardless, it will take anywhere from 15 to 100 million years to see the next future continent, depending on each scenario. Novo Pangaea looks at the possibility in which present-day movements continue. In this scenario, the Atlantic Ocean will continue to expand, all the while making the Pacific smaller. The 2 American continents would first combine northward. Africa, Europe, and Asia will have already combined too, by the time they all meet together in one single huge piece of land. Another possible scenario is called Pangea Ultima. In this case, the Atlantic will slow down in its expansion and actually become a landlocked body of water. North America, Africa, Asia, and Europe would become somewhat parallel pieces of land, completely sewn together. Underneath them, South America, Antarctica, and Australia would complete the circle surrounding the North Atlantic. All the while, this piece of land would be surrounded by a large Pacific Ocean. Asia looks at a scenario that's a bit difficult to understand and study at this point. Since several tectonic plates look like they are moving north, it might be possible that all continents, apart from Antarctica, will slide completely toward the North Pole. The climate would be a lot different and way colder. Both the Pacific and the Atlantic, in this scenario, would remain open bodies of water. Scientists believe this to be a real possibility because of some anomalies left by Pangea deep in the Earth's interior in the part called the mantle. Looking even further into our planet's future, it's estimated that in about 1 billion years, the luminosity of the sun will be somewhere around 10% higher. As such, the atmosphere on Earth will closely resemble that of a moist greenhouse. Because of the added heat, all the bodies of water on our planet will start to rapidly evaporate. Moving further to 4 billion years from now, the temperature on our planet will soon transform it into a Venus look-alike. It might get so hot that the Earth's surface will begin to melt away.
Imagine you're looking up at the sky on a clear night, and you see all those beautiful stars twinkling up there. Well, one of them is Beetlejuice, a celebrity among stars. If you want to catch a glimpse of it, look up at the Orion constellation. It low-key looks like an archer holding a bow, and you can spot Beetlejuice as the reddish-orange dot on their shoulder. It's one of the brightest stars in the sky, so it's hard to miss. Beetlejuice is not your ordinary star. First of all, it's gigantic, up to 1,000 times the size of our sun. Can you imagine that? It's so enormous that if we could somehow replace our sun with Beetlejuice, it would engulf all the inner planets, including Earth. And here's another fun fact. When we look at Beetlejuice, we're actually looking back in time.
Yep, you heard it right.
Beetlejuice is about 600 light years away from us, so the light we see today actually left the star 600 years ago.
It has quite a history. This star has been shining brightly for millions of years. Long, long ago, even before smartphones and telescopes, ancient Sumerians were the first to spot Beetlejuice in the sky, and it's been a diva this entire time. For example, in 1866, Betelgeuse became one of the brightest stars in the night sky. It was so dazzling that people could see it even during the day. Astronomers all around the world went bananas documenting this extraordinary event. Since then, Betelgeuse has been playing hide-and-seek with us. It all started when Betelgeuse started to dim back in 2019. Since then, it likes to dim and brighten sporadically. But these changes in brightness tell us about something important. As we mentioned, Betelgeuse was always a bit of a troublemaker. It's been living a fast and furious life. Because of that, it has been burning its fuel at an incredibly fast rate. The changes in the star's brightness are clues that Betelgeuse is approaching the end of its life cycle. The drama intensified when the Hubble Space Telescope snapped jaw-dropping images of Betelgeuse, like it was getting ready to blow its top. All this made scientists think that the star is close to retiring in a dramatic way. It's about to go supernova. So picture a star partying hard, powered by the fusion of hydrogen atoms. It's like the star's own energy drink, but just like any party, the fuel starts to run out. That's when things get interesting. As the star guzzles up its hydrogen fuel, it slowly begins to run on empty. It can't sustain itself anymore. So now, it's time for the grand finale. This finale is called supernova. The star collapses in on itself like a deflating balloon. The pressure and temperature inside skyrocket to mind-boggling levels, and this celestial tantrum triggers a colossal bang. So you can see why observing Betelgeuse is like having a front row seat to the spectacular drama. But here's the big question. When will this happen? Well, the answer is not as simple as setting a timer. You see, stars have their own schedules, and Beetlejuice is no different. It could be tomorrow, or it could be thousands of years from now. Scientists have come up with only a rough estimate. They believe that Beetlejuice will go supernova within the next 100,000 years. Quite a spread, huh? Sure, that sounds like forever to us, tiny humans. But in the vastness of the universe, it's just a blink of an eye. But there's a chance, just a tiny chance, that Beetlejuice could surprise us all and go supernova much sooner. Considering its dips in brightness, we might be in for a show within the next few hundred years. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, if Beetlejuice does go kaboom, what will happen? We'll get ready for a show like no other, folks. When a star collapses under its own weight, it unleashes a cosmic firework of epic proportions. The star releases a crazy amount of energy in the form of light and heat. Beetlejuice's supernova is going to be extra special. It's like the superstar of supernovas. It will shine so brightly that it might even outshine the other stars in the sky. Picture that, Beetlejuice stealing the spotlight. The show could be so bright that you won't need a telescope to catch a glimpse. Nope, you'll be able to see it with a naked eye. It might even be visible during the day, making the sky look like it's hosting the coolest rave ever. After that, the supernova will keep us entertained for weeks. It will be like having a second moon in the sky, shining as bright as the full thing. Imagine that, 2 moons dancing together in the night. After several weeks of lighting up the night sky, Betelgeuse's supernova will slowly fade away, but it would leave behind a souvenir, an ethereal remnant. It's like a fading memory of the star's epic performance. This remnant, too, would slowly fade away over the course of several months. But it's not just about the light show. The boom will send out powerful shockwaves, and we might actually feel them right here on Earth. It's like the universe giving us a gentle tap on the shoulder, saying, hey, look at this amazing spectacle. How dangerous will it be for us? Well, we know that Beetlejuice's supernova would send dust and gas shooting into the atmosphere. It's like a big space sneeze. And this sneeze could cause a decrease in global temperatures. We're talking serious climate impact here. It could even lead to a mini ice age. But these are just assumptions. We don't know for sure if the consequences will really be that serious. But, of course, we want to be prepared for this event just in case. That's why scientists are studying Beetlejuice closely. But, in addition to serious scientific research, astronomers also have a blast of celestial comedy. Jokes are flying left and right. Someone has even created a Beetlejuice status account, which you can check yourself. So, as you can see, the star is keeping us on our toes. Astronomers keep observing it, and they need our help too. They want us to keep an eye on Beetlejuice and report any changes we see. How do you do that? First off, channel your inner astronomer and observe Betelgeuse. Take a peek at the star and note down what you see. Is it twinkling, shining, or feeling a bit dim? Jot it all down. Then be a superstar yourself and report your observations to the astronomers. Your observations will help them track Betelgeuse's journey towards its big supernova moment. You can also join in on some citizen science projects. They're super fun and easy, trust me. One cool project you can jump into is the Beetlejuice Brightness Monitor. By participating, you help scientists keep tabs on how bright Beetlejuice is shining. Your contribution can make a real difference. So join the monitoring team. You'll be part of something amazing, and who knows, your observations might even help predict when Beetlejuice will show off its supernova magic. By doing that, we can assist them in monitoring this superstar and learn more about the fascinating world of stars. But that's how we can help scientists to predict this event. Now, how can you personally prepare for it? First things first, you'll need the right gear to catch all the supernova action. A trusty telescope is like your front row ticket to the starry show. It'll bring you up close and personal with Beetlejuice's performance. And remember, you'll need special eyewear to shield your eyes from the intense burst of light. Safety first. And of course, prepare in case it decides to mess with our climate. Stock up on essentials, like warm clothes and supplies, just in case we experience a mini ice age. But let's just hope it won't happen. So keep your eyes on the night sky, my friends. Beetlejuice may not be ready to blow up just yet, but when it does, it will be a sight to behold. Until then, let's enjoy the twinkling stars. And remember, there's always something extraordinary happening in the vastness of space.
Beetlejuice, a red supergiant. This ball of boiling plasma is one of the largest stars in our galaxy, and one of the brightest. It's about 500 times larger than the Sun. But Beetlejuice is pulsating, getting bigger and smaller. At its peak, it becomes 800 times its average size. If this star were a bucket, it would fit about 300 million suns, even though its weight is only 17 times greater. And here, about 500 light-years away, is Earth. We launch our faster-than-light spaceship and set off on our journey to Beetlejuice. A few seconds, and we've already traveled 240,000 miles, and now are close to the Moon. That's 9.5 trips around the Earth. A traditional rocket-powered spacecraft would take 3 days to get here. We're near Mars now. The flight to the red planet usually takes about 7 months. Several rovers are now at work here, as well as the first ever flying drone, Ingenuity. The surface of Mars is 3 times smaller than that of Earth. The planet is also 10 times lighter. People hope to build a human colony here soon. Right beyond Mars, we have to wiggle and constantly dodge space rocks. This is the asteroid belt. It contains debris and space objects of different sizes and shapes. The biggest of them is Ceres. Its surface is slightly larger than the area of Argentina, and its weight is about 1% of the Moon's. The total weight of the entire asteroid belt is 25 times less than the Moon's. Next, we pass gas giants Jupiter and Saturn. These are the largest planets in the solar system. They're also the heaviest, even though they don't have a solid surface. Then, we travel by Uranus and Neptune. They're called ice giants. And at the very edge of the solar system, we see Pluto. It was once considered a full-fledged planet, but now it's not even on the list. After that, we're 4.3 billion miles away from our home. It took the New Horizons space probe about 9 years to get here. Hold on to your seat, we're speeding up! We're passing through the Kuiper Belt. There are lots of asteroids and blocks of ice here. These are some of the oldest building materials in our solar system. Billions of years ago, our whole world looked like a cloud of these asteroids. We're traveling further through dark space and reach the edge of the solar system, the heliosphere. All this time, we've been moving with the solar wind, but now it starts to slow down, collides with the interstellar wind, and heats up. This is called the termination shock. The Voyager 1 space probe got to this point in December 2004. We're moving to the region where the heliosphere ends and interstellar space begins. This is the heliopause. In 2012, Voyager crossed this boundary and became the first ever human-made object in interstellar space. But the message from Voyager reporting this event came to Earth almost a year later because of the huge distance. It took 35 years for Voyager 1 to travel all this way. And here it is. The probe is as long as a car and weighs like 2 motorcycles. You can see a gold plate on its hull. It's a message from people to potential civilizations out there. It has pictures of Earth's landscapes, recordings of human speech, and our DNA. As of 2021, Voyager has been operational for almost 43 years. The probe has traveled 14 billion miles. That's like 152 Earth to the Sun distances. And it's still making its way through space at 38,000 miles per hour. Now, we're approaching the nearest star to our solar system. It's Proxima Centauri. We're so far from home that even light needs more than 4 years to travel this distance. If we used a traditional rocket, the trip would take us 73,000 years. The reason we wanted to get here was because of an Earth-like planet called Proxima Centauri b. It's 10% larger than Earth and slightly heavier. It lies in the habitable zone of its host star. It means that water might exist on the planet in its liquid state, and there can be life that forms here. But the star itself occasionally produces flares. Recently, its brightness increased almost 1,000 times. During that time, it emitted so much radiation that even if there were some forms of life on the planet, they probably ceased to exist. We're now more than 8 light-years away from Earth. The brightest star in our night sky is Sirius. Seriously. It's so bright that you can see it even during the day. But in reality, there are actually 2 stars, Sirius A and B. They orbit around a common center of gravity, and these stars are moving toward our solar system at almost 5 miles per second. That's the same as the maximum speed of a top-of-the-line supercar on Earth. Foot down, and we've arrived at a potentially habitable planet, 39 light-years away from Earth. This is TRAPPIST-1d. Its host star is a white dwarf. It's a cold star, 10 times smaller and lighter than the Sun. There are 7 planets around it, but TRAPPIST-1d is the most similar to Earth. It's only 30% smaller and 3 times lighter, but it has a rocky surface and the temperature here is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. You'd feel comfortable here wearing a light jacket. There might be an atmosphere, mountains, seas, and oceans here, which means this planet might be suitable for a human colony. But it would take about 677,000 years to get here using traditional rockets. And here's our main goal, Beetlejuice. It'd take nearly 8.7 million years to travel here from Earth in a current-day spacecraft. This star is so big that our ship looks like a grain of sand on a giant beach. We have to jump back in time to find out what happened to this star. First, there was a beautiful nebula. It's a cloud of multicolored space dust and debris. Then, it began to shrink under its own weight. In the core of the nebula, a nuclear reaction began. Boom! And the star was born. At first, Beetlejuice was very massive and hot, but it didn't expand and remained stable. Let's look into its heart. The nuclear reactions in the star's core create a lot of heat and energy. This energy produces the force that pushes on the walls of the star from the inside and causes it to expand. But at the same time, the star is very heavy. That's why gravity pushes on it from the outside. If these 2 forces are balanced, the star remains stable. But over time, the star runs out of its fuel, helium and hydrogen. That's when heavier elements in the core join the nuclear reaction. When they burn, they release more energy and heat than gravity can hold, and the star starts expanding. That's what's happening to Beetlejuice right now. It's already so big that if you put it in the center of our solar system, its edge would touch the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Beetlejuice will continue to expand until it exhausts its fuel completely. Then the gravity will win. The star will shrink in size, and then an enormous boom will happen. A supernova explosion will be so blinding that Beetlejuice will shine brighter than the moon in the night sky. Luckily, Earth is too far away for this explosion to cause any harm to people. A strong stream of matter that will be ejected from the explosion site won't reach the solar system until 6 million years later. Even so, the solar wind will stop this flow, so we'll be safe. Beetlejuice is likely to explode at any time in the next 10,000 years, but some scientists say it won't happen in the next 100 millennia. Back to the moment before the explosion of Beetlejuice, there can be another, more interesting scenario. Gravity might compress the massive core of the star with such force that a black hole will appear in its place. Black holes are the heaviest objects in the universe. They have incredible gravitational force. Even light can't escape their gravitational trap. The Beetlejuice black hole will begin feeding on cosmic dust and whatever is left of the star. All this debris and light from other stars will get frozen near the event horizon of the growing black hole. For the first time in history, we'll be able to watch the birth of this mysterious object. But in reality, Beetlejuice is too light to become a black hole. Most likely, after the explosion, it'll turn into a white dwarf that will gradually fade until it becomes invisible.
According to a new unpublished study, one of the brightest stars you can see in the night sky is likely to explode within our lifetime. The star in question is a red giant called Beetlejuice. It's located in the left shoulder of the constellation of Orion. The star might have no more than 300 years worth of fuel left in its core. Once it burns through these last reserves, the core will collapse, forming a black hole. As for the star's outer layers, They are likely to be blasted out into space at a mind-boggling 25,000 miles per second. This is what astronomers call a supernova. If Beetlejuice goes supernova, it will be a spectacular sight to watch from Earth. The star is comparatively not far from our planets, just 650 light-years away. So those layers of ejected gas and dust will shine as bright as the full moon. It will also last for several weeks. Interestingly, most astronomers don't believe Beetlejuice is ready to go kaboom yet. Then, what makes the authors of the new paper think otherwise? Well, this star is definitely a red giant that has burned through its primary fuel, hydrogen. At the moment, it's most likely fusing helium remaining in its core into some heavier elements. The point at which a star runs out of its hydrogen is unmissable. When a star is short on hydrogen, it needs to put extra energy into igniting the helium created during the process of hydrogen fusion. These additional efforts make such a star expand dozens of times beyond its original size. It also becomes redder and cooler in the process. Astronomers know that Beetlejuice is very, very large. If you placed it at the center of our solar system, its outer atmosphere would reach so far that it would swallow Jupiter. But it's hard to measure the exact diameter of the star. All because Beetlejuice is not your regular smooth ball of plasma. Instead, it's a lumpy chunk of boiling gas bubbles hiding behind dust clouds. This is the main reason why measuring the size of the star isn't easy. But to determine the star's remaining lifetime, we must know its diameter. And a team of scientists from Japan suggests that Betelgeuse is larger than most astronomers think. The star is known to pulsate. It expands and shrinks, dims and brightens again and again at regular intervals. Researchers link these changes to the periodical expansion of the star's outer region. There are other oddities in the behavior of the star. They appear on a regular basis too. Astronomers see the connection between these quirks and turbulent processes taking place inside the star, which seems ready to go out. The research team behind the new study believes that Betelgeuse's main pulsation mode is represented by the 2,200-day cycle, and the 420-day brightness variation might be the star's secondary quirk. For this scenario to work, Betelgeuse needs to be up to 1/3 wider. And to be as wide as necessary for this model, the star has to be in a later stage of its life, done with burning helium and, instead, running on carbon received from previous fusion of helium atoms. Whether a red giant is burning helium or carbon makes a great difference in terms of how much time it has left. If it's still in its helium-burning phase, the red giant can live for tens of thousands of years. But if it's already in the carbon-burning stage, the end is near and might come within a few thousand years. In the case of Betelgeuse, we can't determine exactly how much carbon the star still has, but carbon exhaustion might happen as soon as in 300 years. After that, fusions of heavier elements might take a few dozens of years. When it's over, the core will collapse and a supernova explosion will occur.
Now, it's been a long time since there was a supernova in the Milky Way. Over 400 years to be precise. So hey, we're long overdue. So here are the most likely stars to go boom, if they haven't already. At the top of the list must be the Southern Hemisphere star Eta Carinae. Greek letters before the name of the constellation indicate the rank of the star's brightness in that constellation. Sir Edmund Halley, in 1677, recorded Eta Carinae as the seventh brightest star in the constellation Carina, Eta being the seventh letter in the Greek alphabet. It might not have looked very bright to Sir Edmund and his contemporaries in the 17th century, but modern studies of Eta Carinae estimate it's 5 million times more luminous than our Sun. Luminous is a technical word astronomers use. It doesn't just mean brightness. Luminosity refers to the total energy released at all frequencies. Eta Carinae releases 5 million times more energy than the Sun. Truly one of the whoppers of the Milky Way, Eta Carinae is 100 times more massive and 240 times larger than our yellow-white dwarf sun, Sol. Obviously, since it appears dim, Eta Carinae is pretty far away, about 7,500 light-years away. Yet even at this distance, if this star goes hypernova, it can still impact Earth's ozone layer, disrupt satellite communications, and harm astronauts. 159 years after Halley's observation, Eta Carinae experienced a nova-like explosion. It increased from a relatively dim star to become the second brightest star visible from Earth, but only for a period of 27 years. From 1836 until 1863, Eta Carinae was the second brightest visible star after Sirius, the dog star, and Sirius is only about 8 light-years away. Since 1863, aside from a couple of flare-ups, Eta Carinae has dimmed back down to its original brightness at magnitude 4.5. Now, astronomers owe us a small apology, which we don't expect to get anytime soon, for star magnitude nomenclature. The brighter a star is, or planet, or moon, the lower its magnitude. Thus, stars brighter than first magnitude are either zero magnitude or negative magnitude. The full moon, for example, is magnitude negative 13. A magnitude positive 4.5 star, like Eta Carinae, is quite dim as seen from Earth, but it's clearly visible in a night sky without light pollution or clouds if you live anywhere south of the latitude of Cairo, Egypt. 30 degrees north latitude is the farthest north you can see this star. Now, listen up. Eta Carinae is currently up to something. It's been brightening again and is now brighter than at any time since 1864. It's a complex situation. Eta Carinae is really two stars, Eta Carinae A and Eta Carinae, what's your guess? Oh, B. There's a third star nearby that's also interacting with the double star's dynamics. Now, without looking, I'm guessing it's named Eta Carinae C. Good guess. Blown out into two incredibly massive globes of gas that are expanding at 20 million miles per hour, Eta Carinae is, without a doubt, one of the strangest looking stars you'll ever see. Remember, it's located at a great distance of 7,500 light-years away from us. And if anything had happened to Eta Carinae in the last 7,500 years, like going hypernova, we wouldn't be able to see it, because none of Eta Carinae's electromagnetic radiation would have gotten here yet. Astronomers are keeping a close watch on Eta Carinae because it can go hypernova at any time. Or maybe it already did 5,000 years ago, in which case we'd only have to wait another 2,500 years to see it. Yeah, like I'll put it in my planner. Now, from a list of over 30 likely candidate stars that might go supernova, Rho Cassiopeiae is many astronomers' choice. Another Greek letter, Rho, is the 17th letter in the Greek alphabet. It means that Rho Cassiopeiae is the star with the 17th brightest apparent magnitude in the constellation Cassiopeia. Yet Rho Cass, a nickname, is only one of 7 known yellow hypergiant stars in the Milky Way. It's another whopper. To be seen at magnitude 4.5 from a distance of about 10,000 light-years away, Rho Cass must be a very large star, a hypergiant. Placed where the Sun is, Rho Cass would encompass the orbit of Mars. But it's still yellow. It's not a red giant star. Red indicates a cooler surface temperature. Rho Cass, as huge as it is still as hot on its surface as our Sun, or even a little hotter. That can only mean two things. Deep inside its core, Rho Cass is fusing atoms much heavier than hydrogen or helium. Plus, Rho Cass is producing much more energy than a red giant star. In the year 2000, Rho Cass erupted massively. It brightened by 2 orders of magnitude as it ejected 10,000 times the mass of Earth into space at 4 times the speed of sound. Astronomers detected the signature of titanium oxide in this eruption. This means that Rho Cass is much closer to going supernova, or in this particular case, hypernova, than astronomers used to assume. Iron is just a few steps above titanium in the periodic table, and when iron forms, fusion stops and a star collapses. Rho Cass is really close, or more correctly, was really close, because the eruption we saw in the year 2000 really happened 10,000 years before. Many astronomers think Rho Cass has already gone hypernova, formed a black hole, and doesn't even exist anymore. Meanwhile, Beetlejuice caught everyone's attention not so long ago. The star, not the movie. It dimmed dramatically, appearing only 37% as bright as it usually is. Is it getting ready to go supernova? Betelgeuse is by far the brightest star in the whole sky, in infrared light. This is an important fact because it relates to Betelgeuse's status as a supernova candidate, as we shall soon see. Betelgeuse is also named Alpha Orionis, another Greek letter designation. So we should conclude that Betelgeuse is the brightest star in Orion, right? Wrong. It's the second brightest star in its constellation. Rigel, or Beta Orionis, is the brightest one in that region. Figure that one out. It may be because Betelgeuse is classified as a semi-regular variable star, which sounds kind of redundant to me. Its approximately 400-day cycle of pulsation changes its brightness by about 1 full magnitude, going from much brighter than a first magnitude star to closer to a second magnitude star. But never was Betelgeuse observed to dim so rapidly or so drastically as it did recently. So what's going on with it? Well, from late 2019 to mid-2020, Betelgeuse went through a period of substantial dimming during a mass ejection event. The world astronomy community jumped on the situation, and in the course of their investigations, they came up with some surprising new factual data on Betelgeuse. First, Betelgeuse is not as far away as we once thought. The new, more accurate distance for Betelgeuse is 548 light-years. That's 25% closer than previously measured. The second new fact, Betelgeuse's diameter has been reduced by the same percentage. The star is now known to be 25% smaller than previously believed. The cause of Betelgeuse's dramatic dimming was also determined. The giant star ejected a cloud of gas that contained magnesium. The cloud blocked a large portion of the light coming from Betelgeuse and made it appear visually much dimmer than it really was. Magnesium is not halfway to iron on the periodic table, which means Betelgeuse is not as far along on the path to a supernova as was suspected previously. When iron starts forming in the star, it means that this star is close to shutting down its fusion reactions. The next step is implosion. We aren't quite there yet with Betelgeuse. This star emits most of its energy as infrared light, and it also indicates that its core is most probably still burning helium, and not something that would greatly increase the amount of heat, like carbon for instance. Betelgeuse will still go supernova, but not for another 100,000 years. So you can cross it off your supernova list for the time being. And as for how to correctly pronounce Betelgeuse, you can say it any way you like. There are as many different pronunciations out there as there are people who think they know how to pronounce it correctly. Now, supernova 1987A caught astronomers off guard when it lit up the large Magellanic Cloud 100,000 plus light-years away from the Milky Way. That's when attention was turned to a similar star much closer to Earth, Rigel, in the constellation of Orion. Could Rigel surprise us and suddenly go supernova? There's something called the supernova problem that you should, probably know about because it may relate to Rigel going supernova or not. It seems that stars over 17 solar masses don't always go supernova. Recently, a red giant star simply vanished. Once again, it didn't go supernova, it disappeared. This had often been happening in computer simulations of supernovae, and now it finally occurred in real life. Rigel's mass is 21 solar masses. In other words, it's 21 times more massive than our Sun. So, will Rigel go supernova or simply vanish into a black hole that it'll create in its core? Astronomers and physicists continue their work of learning more about the dynamics of massive stars, scouring the sky for the next supernova in the Milky Way. Meanwhile, we can rest confident that we on Earth are in no danger from the harmful effects of nearby supernova explosions. We live in a nice, quiet, peaceful, stellar neighborhood, except for those Martians next door.
Arcturus, a huge red star. It's just bursting from inside out. The red sea of plasma on its surface rages and pulsates. The star burns anything that comes close to it. And now, plop! Arcturus is gone. But at the same moment, it reappears at the center of our solar system, replacing the sun. What we see in the sky isn't a small yellow dot anymore, but a giant red ball. It's 25 times wider and 30% heavier than the sun. Even though Arcturus is a little cooler, it's still a total nightmare for Earth. The distance from our planet to the star is now 25 times less. all the water in the oceans and rivers begins to evaporate. What used to be rainforests are quickly turning into a lifeless desert. But sunsets and sunrises now look amazing. Imagine yourself on the roof of the Empire State Building, watching the sunrise. First, you see the light over the horizon. It almost blinds you because Arcturus is 110 times brighter than the sun. Then, the star gradually climbs over the surface. The thick dot on the horizon gets wider and wider. It continues to grow until the red star is everything you can see. Arcturus is now so close that you can even see storms of hot plasma on its surface. There are periodic outbursts and mass ejections. Huge amounts of matter are ejected from the surface of the star at speeds of up to 1,200 miles per second. The matter takes the form of a loop attached to the star at both ends. And you have to wear a super advanced spacesuit to be able to observe such a sunrise. Life on Earth ceased to exist long ago under these conditions, and it's going to get worse over time because every 8 days, Arcturus's brilliance increases, and soon our planet will become more like Venus. It's so close to the sun that the high temperature makes any life there impossible. Okay, let's let our planet cool down a bit and put Proxima Centauri in the center of our solar system. It's not a red giant, but a red dwarf. This star is almost 7 times smaller than the sun and almost 9 times lighter. Now our oceans and rivers are not evaporating, but freezing over. Forests and jungles are covered with snow. In about a week, there won't be a single place on Earth where the temperature is above freezing. Even plants that are used to the cold will cease to exist. They mostly feed on the sun's energy. Now, they begin to starve. But there will still be water deep beneath the ice layer. It'll be heated by the hot core of our planet. Microorganisms will still be able to survive. It's much darker on Earth too. It's like an endless twilight here. Oh, and we can barely see the moon. The thing is, it doesn't produce its own light, but reflects it from the bright sun. With Proxima Centauri instead, the moon will lose its brightness.
Hop on the bright side of life together with our brand new tees, hoodies, and more. Click the link to pick your choice.
But an even bigger problem would be with our orbit. The sun has a certain gravitational force, and it keeps us just in the sweet habitable zone, where we're not too hot and not too cold. Proxima Centauri's gravity is much weaker, and Earth is slowly drifting away from the star. We now run the risk of encountering asteroids flying through space, or even other planets. But the worst case scenario is if Proxima Centauri simply can't hold our planet, and we fly away into dark space. Then, you can forget about any forms of life here. Now, let's put Sirius at the center of our solar system. It's the brightest star in our night sky. It's only 70% bigger than the sun, but almost twice as hot. So its glow is not only bright, it's sizzling. And its light is not yellow, but somewhere between blue and white. You couldn't go out in the city without sunglasses, or Sirius glasses. Still, you wouldn't want to walk the streets, where the asphalt is boiling anyway. You could literally fry eggs on the curb. Of course, by this time, all life on Earth has long since disappeared. But it's not just because of the temperature. Sirius emits enormous amounts of radiation. Our atmosphere serves as a shield against the sun, but in the case of Sirius, that shield wouldn't be enough. Now, why don't we take a more bizarre approach and make ourselves a double star system? These are 2 stars that revolve around a common center. And there's our Earth, safe and sound. It's all about the size and brightness of the stars. These 2 aren't too big, and they give off as much light as our sun. All that matters to us is that our planet is in the safe zone of the double star system. At sunrise, you first see one star appear from below the horizon, and then, a couple of minutes later, the other. The only problem is that this beauty may soon explode with enormous force. In binary systems, one star is always heavier than its companion. Sooner or later, it starts pulling matter away from the smaller star. Gradually, the bigger star just eats its neighbor. Then the big brother can reach a critical mass and explode. This explosion would be about as strong as a supernova. It would destroy our entire solar system. The light from this explosion would be visible for hundreds of light years away. And after that, there would be a huge nebula in the place of our star system. It's stardust and particles that are left from our world. Going to the realm of the crazy now, a black hole. Yes, there's one at the center of our solar system now. We know black holes are scary, mysterious objects that pull in everything in their path. But even around a black hole, there is a habitable zone. You just have to be far enough away so that it doesn't drag you down into its black abyss. Mercury and Venus would be too close to the black hole, so most likely they'd be torn apart and then head for the event horizon. This is the last stop before hitting the singularity, the heart of the black hole. There are only two problems: light and time. A black hole pulls light in instead of emitting it, so the Earth will quickly become dark and cold. And time goes slower around heavy objects. Near a black hole, 1 second can be equal to weeks or even months away in outer space. We won't feel this difference, but the entire universe around us will develop faster relative to us. Any object can become a black hole if it's compressed to a certain size. For example, the Sun can become one if it's shrunk to a width of 3.7 miles. And even the Earth, if you squeeze it to a width of 0.7 inches, it becomes a black hole. Oh, now there's some little rock lurking in the center of our solar system. It's a neutron star. It's about 18 miles wide. Some meteorites are much bigger than that, but it has a mass comparable to the Sun, so its gravitational force is about the same, and our planet's orbit is intact. But the problem is that neutron stars emit next to no visible light, so it's now permanent night on Earth. Still, it gets very hot here. When a neutron star is born, it can be several times hotter than the Sun at first, but it quickly cools down to the temperature we're used to. So there's a chance that all life on Earth hasn't yet been scorched. Another problem is that these little guys are rapidly spinning and can become pulsars. It's kind of like a powerful spotlight on two sides of a spinning star. Neutron stars also eject radiation at tremendous speeds. These rays will make our planet literally sterile. No life form would be able to exist under these conditions. And now, it's time for the biggest star ever known, Stephenson 218. This red giant is 2,150 times larger than the Sun, and if we place it at the center of our solar system, its edge will lie on Saturn's orbit. So Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter are already swallowed by the huge star. Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are roasting like chestnuts on a fire and will soon evaporate. In fact, this could happen to our Sun as well. The older it gets, the redder and bigger it becomes. It'll eventually run out of its fuel, hydrogen, and the Sun will start to burn heavier elements in its core. This will cause it to expand. Then we'll see more beautiful sunsets and sunrises, but the temperature will become too high. In theory, the Sun will get so big that it'll swallow the Earth, and then it'll explode in a supernova, leaving nothing of our entire solar system behind. Shiny.
What would it be like to live on a planet traveling around a star so huge that, in comparison to it, our Sun looks like a tiny speck of dust? Well, you could find it out if you manage to visit a planet orbiting WOH-G64. It's a red supergiant, an enormous star dwelling in the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is a satellite galaxy located not too far away from our home Milky Way galaxy. Red supergiants in the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds provide an excellent opportunity to observationally test the current stellar evolution theory for massive stars. WOH-G64 is likely the largest star we have found so far. It's a real heavyweight emitting an incredibly bright light. To understand the sheer size of this megastar better, let's put it into perspective. Compared to our star, the radius of WOH-G64 is around 1,540 times bigger. In other words, It's like comparing a tiny grain of sand to a basketball. If we placed WOH-G64 at the center of the solar system, the surface of this star would extend past the orbit of Jupiter, swallowing up Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter itself. You see, the average radius of Jupiter's orbit is around 1,000 times the radius of the Sun. As for Saturn, the radius of its orbit is around 2,000 times the radius of the Sun. That's why WOH-G64, with its average radius being 1,500 times the radius of the Sun, fits right in between. Oh, and if you spread out the star's dust envelope, it would cover a distance of about 1 light year, or 5.88 trillion miles. The star is not only ginormous, but also immensely bright. In fact, it's one of the most luminous stars we know of. Luminosity is the total amount of energy a star emits per unit of time. And the light coming from WOH-G64 is around 282,000 times brighter than the light from our Sun. But perhaps one of the most amazing features of WOH-G64 is the dust envelope surrounding it. In 2007, astronomers, with the help of the Very Large Telescope, discovered that WOH-G64 was surrounded by a torus-shaped cloud. It's so thick that to some extent it obscures the star. The dust envelope is made up of the material the star has expelled, and it contains between 3 to 9 times the mass of the Sun. The star we're talking about was discovered in the 1970s by Bengt Westerlund, Olander, and Hayden. That's where the WOH in the name of the star comes from. It's an abbreviation made up of the first letters of the discoverers' names. By the way, Westerlund also discovered another remarkable red supergiant, Westerlund 126. It was spotted in a massive star cluster called Westerlund 1 in the constellation of Ara. But back to WOH-G64. Scientists have noted that this star lies very close to or even beyond the Hayashi limit. It is a theoretical constraint upon the maximum radius of a star for a given mass, a condition where the inward force of gravity is matched by the outward pressure of the gas. By now, the star WOH-G64 has reached such an evolved state that it can no longer hold onto its atmosphere because of super low density, high radiation pressure, and relatively opaque products of thermonuclear fusion. That's why its average mass loss is among the highest known to us so far. It's unusually high even for a red supergiant. WOH-G64 also shows an unexpected spectrum of nebular emissions. The hot gas is rich in nitrogen and has a radial velocity more positive than that of the star, which is quite an unusual phenomenon. The star might have a potential companion, an O-type main sequence star. If it turns out to be true, then WOH-G64 will be classified as a binary star. At the same time, so far, there have been no confirmations of this theory, partly because the intervening dust clouds make the examination of the star very difficult. In any case, WOH-G64 is absolutely fascinating, not only because of its huge size, but also because of its unbelievable luminosity and mysterious dust envelope. It's a great example of how unexpected and amazing our universe can get. Besides, such outstanding large stars are undoubtedly an important astronomical observation. The results of studies of such objects correct the restrictions on the properties of stars within the framework of modern models. For testing the applicability of models, the exceptions to the rules are most valuable.
Can a planet be bigger than its parent star? Well, if you mean a star like our Sun, it's highly unlikely. But what if it was a white dwarf, the remnant of a star similar to ours that went out after shedding its outer layers and leaving behind nothing but the core? This core is what we call a white dwarf. Usually, it's around the size of our home planet. If a star had a planet bigger than Earth before it extinguished, it's possible that such a planet could survive all the chaos. In this case, a planet that is bigger than its star might actually exist. And we've even found planetary systems like this. But there's one problem. A white dwarf isn't a real star like our Sun anymore. It doesn't produce energy, just sits out there getting cooler and cooler. So probably such systems don't count. For comparison, the Sun is working non-stop. It is fusing hydrogen into helium in its core. It has been doing it for more than 4 billion years and is going to keep doing it for the next 7 or 8 billion years. The Sun is 10 times as wide as the largest planet in our solar system, gas giant Jupiter. And sadly, you can't get a planet much larger than that. If you start adding mass to such a world, it will get smaller, not bigger. So it seems you can find a planet larger than the Sun. But there are also dim red dwarf stars. They're the smallest out there, barely massive enough to maintain fusion in their cores. The tiniest stars that we know about have been discovered recently. If astronomers' conclusions are correct, then both of them can hardly fuse hydrogen into helium. And it takes about 0.077 times the Sun's mass, or 75 masses of Jupiter, to be able to do that. And still, they're real stars, just very tiny, smaller than Jupiter. One of them is only about the size of Saturn, which must mean that stars can have planets bigger than they are, right? Well, theoretically. When it comes to practice, you can hardly find such planetary systems. We've found and observed quite a lot of exoplanets, which are worlds orbiting other stars. It seems that there are indeed loads of trends out there in space, different masses, sizes, brightness, and so on. But the main trend? Red dwarfs don't usually have gas giants orbiting them. If they do have planets, those are typically small, rocky worlds, more like Earth. Those are also called terrestrial planets. For example, a red dwarf called TRAPPIST-1 has 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting it. But gas giants circling around red dwarfs are extremely rare. Hardly 1 in 100 tiny stars can boast such a planet. This number can be even smaller since the research has been done using candidate planets which haven't been confirmed yet. Plus, the smallest stars are also the dimmest. It means they are extremely hard to detect, and it's incredibly hard to figure out whether they have planets orbiting them, and if they do, whether these planets are gas giants or terrestrial worlds. Still, it's possible that a system where the planet is larger than its parent star exists. But the probability is statistically very low. At the same time, red dwarf stars are very numerous. They're actually the most common kind of star in the galaxy, making up around 70% of all stars. And even though really tiny red dwarfs are relatively rare, there still must be millions or probably even billions of them in the galaxy. And if there's even a small fraction of red dwarfs with gas giants orbiting them, it might still mean that a lot of such systems exist in total, and some of them can have planets bigger than their host star.